Chapter 370. Your Life. Looking at Nangongja, Jiraiya was actually a little envious at the moment, because such a peaceful life really made him very fascinated. Anyway, I'm really happy to see you no longer have the original unapproachable appearance, but slowly have a mortal side. Yes, in Jiraiya's view, whether it was himself, Watergate, or Nangongja 3 years ago, they have actually broken away from the level of mortal. Because in their lives, there is no such thing as the most basic life. Every day is deceit, and every moment is a life and death battle. Such a life is not what a normal human being should have, and humans who have such a situation are naturally not normal mortals. On the contrary, the current Nangongja has an indescribable gentleness on his face all the time. Whether it is the breath on his body or the soft contour of his face, it makes people feel very comfortable. If Jiraiya had to find someone to compare with Nangongja, perhaps only Naruto, who has followed him for 3 years and whose strength has increased a lot, but has always retained the heart of a child, can have such qualifications, right? Even Watergate didn't have such a state. Naruto is like the sun hanging high in the sky, hot and intense, releasing his light and heat for everyone without reservation, making the ice in everyone's heart begin to dissipate under such sunshine. On the other hand, Nangongja was more like a stove used at home. It wasn't blazing hot, but it constantly emitted a warm aura. This kind of warmth was so quiet and refreshing, making everyone feel incomparably comfortable. The appearance of a mortal. After listening to Jiraiya's words, Nangongja slowly reached out and touched his face, and said with amusement, "So becoming a mortal is just a little fat? Then Jiraiya-sama, you are also a standard mortal." Nangongja's words made Jiraiya laugh. Isn't this a way to say that I'm fat? When did the original Nangongja make such a joke with me? Can be seen that Nangongja has indeed changed a lot. You suddenly joked with me. I really can't accept it so quickly for a while. You used to be cold, but now you take the initiative to make fun of me. No, the difference is too big. I need to calm down. Jiraiya didn't pick up Nangongja's words just now. Instead, he directly told Nangongja that he couldn't accept Nangongja's change. Nangongja naturally understood Jiraiya's meaning. He understood that Jiraiya and Naruto had just returned to Woodleaf Village and must have a lot of things to do, so he immediately said to Jiraiya very understandingly, "Ha, I know that Jiraiya-sama should have just returned to Woodleaf, and Naruto hasn't seen his father and mother for a long time. You are also going to find them, right? I won't bother you today, but you must come to my house when you have time. In the past few years, I have been practicing my cooking skills, and I will make your eyes light up." Although Nangongja didn't say her name, both of them knew that Jiraiya must want to see the woman he loved deeply. So Nangongja also gave Jiraiya a good excuse to end the conversation. Jiraiya cupped his hand and said to Nangongja, "I'll leave first. Then I'll take my leave first. I reckon that there will be a lot of trivial matters in the next 2 days. If I have time, I will definitely come to your house and have a good taste of your self-praising skills." As soon as his voice fell, Jiraiya jumped to the roof, obviously chasing after Naruto, who had run away just now. Nangongja also slowly walked to the front of the stall of the auntie who was selling vegetables just now, reached out and took the vegetables he had just stored in the auntie's stall. He took out his wallet from the inner pocket of his coat, counted the money and handed it to the auntie to pay the bill. The auntie looked at Nangongja curiously while giving Nangongja the change. Finally, it seemed that she couldn't hold back her curiosity and said to Nangongja, "Is the person who just talked to you Jiraiya-sama?" Hearing the auntie's question, Nangongja was a little surprised. After all, although Jiraiya's name was famous, there were not many people who could recognize his face. The last time Jiraiya appeared in Woodleaf was 3 years ago. It was amazing that the auntie could recognize Jiraiya. "It's indeed Jiraiya-sama. How did you recognize him? Jiraiya-sama hasn't appeared in public for nearly 3 years. Hearing Nangongja's doubts, the auntie seemed to be excited for a while. She said to Nangongja with a red face, "I'm actually about the same age as Jiraiya-sama. Back then, Jiraiya-sama's house was not far from my house. We used to see each other all the time. No one would have thought that the little rascal who liked to peep at the women's bathhouse has now become a famous sannin. Even Hokage-sama is Jiraiya's apprentice. Speaking of which, after the water sect came to power, there were quite a few people who dug up some things about the water sect. Watergate himself also wanted to use Jiraiya's reputation to cover up the fact that he was an orphan, so it could be regarded as promoting the more glorious side of Jiraiya. Although Nangongja knew that even the current Jiraiya was actually just a little rascal who peeped at the women's bathhouse, but now he not only peeped at the women's bathhouse but also wrote a small book. But these words couldn't be said casually. After casually dealing with the auntie for a while, Nangongja carried some vegetables and walked in the direction of his home. During this time, Nangongja has basically taken over the responsibility of cooking at home. Even Mashiro is now only helping Nangongja when cooking. Today, because he met Jiraiya and chatted a few more words, now he actually came home 20 minutes later than usual. She still didn't know how hungry the girls in her family were. Thinking of this, Nangongja couldn't help but speed up his pace. There was no afterimage, no smoke, but Nangongja moved forward on the road at a very fast speed. Step by step, seemingly ordinary steps, he moved far more than the length of a step. Did Nangongja really waste 3 years like this? Chapter 371. Brother Nangong, you're finally back. Why didn't you come home for so long? As soon as he opened the door, little Linger stood in front of Nangongja angrily. She had a look of strong condemnation written on her face, and she lost her temper at Nangongja. Speaking of which, little Linger was not young anymore, but in front of Nangongja, she still looked like a child. Although little Linger complained, Nangongja was not annoyed. He smiled and touched little Linger's head, and said to little Linger, "It's my fault. When I was shopping today, I saw Naruto and Jiraiya returning to the village, so I chatted with Jiraiya for a while. I didn't expect time to pass so fast, and I was late to cook. It's okay, brother will cook for you now. Okay?" Little Linger was not an unreasonable person. When she heard Nangongja say that Naruto was back, little Linger suddenly remembered the child who had been following her behind in the past. Naruto Komatsu is back? This guy has been gone for 3 years. I don't know what he is like now. Although little Linger was still muttering, Nangongja didn't mind at all. He just changed his coat and shoes and ran into the kitchen with the ingredients he just bought. Mashiro saw Nangongja coming over, and he reached out and took the bag in Nangongja's hand. He took out the ingredients one by one, put them in his refrigerator, and then said to Nangongja, "Jiraiya-sama is back?" It seems something happened. These few days the report of Blood-Clothed Pavilion also stated that recently the personnel of Akatsuki organization have been mobilized very frequently, and many ninjas belonging to Akatsuki organization have already entered the scope of Wind Country in disguise. They aren't dying. Over the years, a lot of important information from Blood-Cloth Pavilion was passed through Mashiro's hands before being transferred to Nangongja. So Akatsuki was clear about the Biju's desire. Originally, he thought that Akatsuki would first target some people who didn't belong to a big ninja village or didn't have a high status like Column Force, but now Akatsuki's power has slowly penetrated into the Wind Country. Ichibi Shikaku. Nangongja knew what Mashiro meant, and he couldn't help muttering to himself. Gaara, as Ichibi Shikaku, Column Force, he had already ascended to the throne of the Kazekages. With his own ability and the support from his father, Gaara could be said to be sitting firmly in the Kazekage's position at this moment. It was indeed very surprising that Akatsuki dared to attack Gaara. But thinking about it carefully, it also made some sense. First of all, among the 5 major countries, the Wind Country was indeed a weak country. The barren land and harsh environment doomed such a country to be very weak. Second, although the strength of a Biju didn't depend entirely on the number of tails, the Ichibi was indeed not strong among the 9 Biju. It was normal to solve the problem like this. Third, and the most important point, in fact, in Gaara's heart, he was very repulsed by Ichibi Shikaku in his body, so there was no way for him to fully communicate with Ichibi. Although Gaara's strength was not bad, he was far from reaching the real Kage level, so now was a good time to attack Gaara. These things will naturally be dealt with by the people who should have a headache. Nangongja thought for a while, but he didn't have any plans to help Sunagakure get through this difficult time. Would Leaf and Sunagakure have signed an offensive and defensive alliance after the Chunin exam 3 years ago? To a certain extent, Sunagakure has become half a vassal of Woodleaf. In order to protect the image of Woodleaf, Watergate will never sit back and watch Sunagakure suffer such a heavy blow. Although Woodleaf can't be said to have completely suppressed the ninja world, the effect of the medical ninja training program and the combat ninja training program in recent years is extremely significant. After so many years of sharpening their fangs, it's time to show their edge, isn't it? Mashiro was also a person with great political insight. When he heard Nangongja's words, he also understood the cause and effect of it, and the original worry in his eyes disappeared. He was the person who assisted Nangongja, and all the decisions were actually made by Nangongja in the end. As long as Nangongja didn't miss any important things, he naturally didn't have to say anything. After Nangongja understood all these things, he also focused on what to eat for breakfast at home. It's just that Japanese breakfast is actually very simple, mostly some rice, miso soup, tofu, fish, and so on. But after all, there are more girls in the family, and such a light breakfast is really not popular. So Nangongja gradually learned to make some breakfast with some Western characteristics to enrich the table. Looking at Mashiro, Nangongja tentatively asked, "How about, we eat blueberry cream fruit muffins this morning?" Hearing the rather long name, Mashiro's eyes couldn't help but shine. It seems that at this moment, the refreshing sour taste of the blueberry, the delicate and soft sweetness of the cream, and the soft texture of the muffins have automatically emerged in his mind. Sure enough, never talk about desserts with girls. Otherwise, they definitely won't let it go. While Nangong's family was struggling with the problem of breakfast, at this moment in the Hokage's office, Watergate was looking at the child who has been away from him for 3 years, Uzumaki Naruto. The strong feeling from the bone marrow, from the depths of the blood, was washing Watergate's brain over and over again, and he opened his mouth again and again, but again and again he was speechless. At the best, Watergate slowly walked to Naruto's side. Looking at Naruto, who was almost the same height as him, he could only slowly say, You've grown up?" After saying such a dry word, for a while Watergate, who was very talkative, couldn't say anything more at this moment. Jiraiya, who was standing next to the two, saw the strange atmosphere between the father and son and said, Well, if there is anything you want to talk about between father and son, put it at home for the time being. I came back this time not only because of Naruto's success in training, so I came back to the village. The more important reason is that I found out through various channels that the Akatsuki is going to make a big move recently. I was worried that they might make a move on Woodleaf, so I hurried back to remind you, Watergate. Chapter 372. With Jiraiya's help, the awkward atmosphere between Watergate and Naruto finally dissipated a little. Maybe all men are so clumsy? When it came to their true feelings, everyone's IQ and EQ plummeted, causing the situation to become extremely tense. Hearing Jiraiya's words, Watergate also sat back in his chair. In an instant, the charisma of a leader burst out directly from Watergate's body, in sharp contrast to the previous somewhat dull father image. Since Sensei has something to say, glancing at Naruto standing next to Jiraiya, Watergate continued, Naruto, you go home first. Shinakushina is waiting for you at home. I still have something to discuss with Sensei. As expected by Naruto, when Watergate encountered such a matter involving Woodleaf and the ninja world, Watergate would definitely stick to the bottom line and not let Naruto, who was only a genin, participate in it. Then I'll go first. After slightly saluting his father and Jiraiya, Naruto also left Hokage's office. Looking at Naruto's leaving figure, Jiraiya said to Watergate with some bitterness, You usually look so smart, but how come you are even more dull than Sensei when it comes to Naruto's problem? Over the past few years, I have been with Naruto day and night, and I can be regarded as someone who understands Naruto's mind more. If you always have such an attitude, even if Naruto wants to reconcile with you, he may not be able to do it. Watergate heard Jiraiya's complaint, but he didn't seem to have any emotional fluctuations. He still said with a flat face, Let's talk about this another day. After all, Naruto and I are father and son. There will always be a chance to explain these misunderstandings. Now, the most important thing is the movement of Akatsuki and the ninja world. I can't let Woodleaf decline in my hands. Jiraiya glanced at Watergate, who was sitting on a large chair, and muttered to himself. As expected, both the father and the son are a pair of idiots. Watergate raised his eyebrows slightly. Although Jiraiya's voice was very low, Watergate could still hear it with his hearing. Perhaps Jiraiya was muttering so that Watergate could hear him. We didn't know all this, but after this little complaint, Jiraiya told Watergate some information about Akatsuki that he just mentioned. "Mom, I'm back." Naruto took out the key that he hadn't used for several years from his pocket and opened the door of his house. He habitually shouted towards the house. It was okay that he didn't shout. As soon as he shouted, there was a burst of sound of pots and pans in the house. Obviously, Shinakushina heard Naruto's voice, and she was in a hurry. After a while, Shinakushina, wearing an apron and holding a pan in her hand, ran out of the house. Her white face was stained with a little black stain, and there was a faint smell of cooking oil. It looked like she was cooking. Naruto looked at his mother coming out, and his face showed a bright smile. It was completely different from the dull expression he had when he saw Watergate just now. Slowly opening his hands, Naruto was ready to hug his mother. However, watching Shinakushina's figure rushing towards him faster and faster, Naruto had a bad feeling in his heart. In particular, Shinakushina's face was getting clearer and clearer in Naruto's eyes, and the blue veins on her forehead were so obvious. "You bastard!" She raised the pan in her hand high, and the black bottom of the pan even appeared a little blurred under the effect of speed and strength. Bang! Naruto was directly hit in the cheek by the pan, and his whole body flew up and smashed into the wall. Immediately, the originally smooth wall had been printed with the faint figure of Naruto. But if you look carefully, you will find that there is another mark on the wall that Naruto hit that is not so similar to Naruto's figure. Let's give the best blessing to Watergate and Naruto and live on. You clearly said that you will write to me every week and send me at least one photo every month. But look at it yourself. Shinakushina took out a large box from nowhere, and after opening the lid of the box, letters and photos leaked out. Looking at these letters and photos, Shinakushina, who originally looked aggressive, immediately looked like a different person at the moment, looking extremely weak. "You sent me 16 letters and 5 photos less. Do you know how worried your mother was when she didn't receive your letter? Although Jiraiya-sensei is very powerful, he is careless. If I accidentally hurt you, even, what should I do?" As she spoke, a few tears came out from the corner of Shinakushina's eyes. Naruto is a slightly dull person, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't understand his mother's love for him. Naruto actually remembers these 16 letters and 5 photos, but Naruto still didn't send them. Shinakushina's guess is right. He did not send these letters because of injuries and other reasons, but how can he say it directly? "Mom, it's my fault. I really forgot those few times. Although Horny Sage is a pervert, he is still very powerful. I have learned a lot from him in the past few years. Don't blame him." Naruto buckled himself down from the wall and slowly walked to his mother to comfort her. Shinakushina finally broke free from the sad mood and looked up at her child carefully. Although she could see the photos, it was not as real as what she saw with her own eyes. "My child." Shinakushina slowly stood up straight and compared herself with her child, and found that she was no longer as tall as Naruto. The child who originally lived with her, with a snot hanging from his nose, has now become a heroic and vigorous young man. "It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. Mom made a lot of food for you, all of which are your favorite. Let's go eat, and then you can tell me about your experience in the past few years." "Okay." Hearing Shinakushina say that she made food, Naruto's face, which was originally black because of the attack from the bottom of the pot, became darker at this moment. Chapter 373. As for Shinakushina's cooking, well, let's not comment too much. Otherwise, the frying pan that made Naruto and Watergate suffer so much will fall on our heads. All we need to know is that 3 days after Naruto and Shinakushina had a meal together, Naruto lost 5 kilograms. Naruto, who had just returned to Woodleaf, naturally had to visit his friends whom he hadn't seen for a long time. So the days flew by just like that. Naruto naturally didn't forget Nangongja, who had always taken care of him since he was a child. At this moment, Naruto was standing in front of Nangong's house with the gift his mother prepared. Because it wasn't convenient for him to knock on the door with both hands, Naruto clamped the gift he was holding in his right hand under his left arm. He extended his hand and gently knocked on the beautiful red wooden door of the Nangong family. Soon, a response was heard from the courtyard. The door creaked open, and Naruto was able to see Uncle Nangong, whom he hadn't seen for several years. Even though Shinakushina repeatedly told Naruto that Nangongja had changed a lot in the past few years, Naruto was still so shocked that the gift in his hand fell to the ground. Fortunately, Shinakushina was careful when she prepared the gift and didn't put anything fragile in it. Otherwise, so many gifts would have been wasted. Naruto came around 11 o'clock, and it was almost lunchtime. Naruto probably chose this time to avoid being baptized by his mother's delicious food. Since he was a child, Naruto liked to eat at Nangong's house. After all, Mashiro's cooking was really good. Nangongja had begun to take on the responsibility of cooking for his family in the past few years. So at this moment, Nangongja was wearing an apron and holding a big spoon in his hand to open the door for Naruto. Nangongja's somewhat round face and gentle temperament reminded Naruto of the cafeteria uncle when he was in ninja school. Nangong. Uncle Nangong. Looking at Nangongja's current appearance, Naruto stuttered. Although I have always called you uncle, you have always been super handsome in my heart. That cool temperament and handsome face. How did you really become an uncle now? Naruto's relationship with Nangongja was very good, so he could make some harmless jokes. Nangongja was naturally aware of the changes he had undergone in the past few years. Being teased by Naruto, whom he had watched grow up, Nangongja also smiled and stretched out a hand to flick Naruto's forehead. Even you are teasing me like this? You came at the right time. Today I suddenly wanted to make ramen. It seems that even God wants me to invite you to eat at my house. Nangongja was naturally very clear about Naruto's love for ramen. Today he really suddenly wanted to make ramen, and then Naruto came over. It was an inexplicable fate, right? Ramen? When he heard about ramen, Naruto had already become excited. Let me tell you, Uncle Nangong, I have eaten a lot of famous ramen in the ninja world with lascivious sage in the past few years, but I still think that Raku family's ramen is the best. The ramen made by Uncle Baku is simply amazing. I don't know what Uncle Nangong's ramen will look like. Hearing Naruto's words, Naruto seemed to be questioning his cooking skills. For a moment, Nangongja didn't know where some unknown fire came from. He said to Naruto, "Then I will make it for you to see. I won't eat your tongue in my stomach. Ahahaha. Then I will wait and see what kind of ramen uncle can make," Naruto said to Nangongja with a happy smile. The two also ended the conversation and walked into Nangong's house together. Today, Little Linger and Nangong Ro went out to do something. Only Mashiro and Nangongja were at home, but Nangongja prepared a lot of ingredients. Obviously, it was prepared for Little Linger and Nangong Ro who would come back from playing. Seeing Naruto at home, Mashiro also said to Naruto very gently, "I heard from Miyagi that you came back, but I didn't see you at home. It seems that the smell of ramen today attracted you here?" Facing Mashiro's teasing, Naruto didn't act as unrestrained as when he was talking to Nangongja at the door. Instead, he said to Mashiro shyly, "Mashiro-san, don't laugh at me. These days, Kakashi-sensei asked me to check my progress. Sakura-sen asked me to tell her about my experience in the ninja world, and even Shikamaru and Choji pestered me to treat them. After a few days, it finally calmed down, so I quickly came to see you." When Naruto spoke, his nervous and serious attitude directly made Mashiro laugh. She walked to Naruto's side and said to Naruto with a slightly reproachful tone, "You child, big sister is just joking with you? Why are you so serious? I know that you will be busy after coming back. Your Uncle Nangong and I have been at home all the time, and we are not in a hurry for you to come to see us. As long as you can come, it is already very good." Shinakushina was born with a bad temper. Although her love for Naruto was unquestionable, she was also a little violent. But Mashiro was different. She was a woman as gentle as water. Every time Naruto came to Nangongja's house, Mashiro would be so gentle, which made Naruto's heart faintly have the idea of putting Mashiro in the same position as his mother. So when facing Mashiro, Naruto always couldn't help but relax. Mashiro, you and Naruto go to the living room and chat first. We haven't seen each other for so long. I think Naruto has a lot to say to you. The porcupine bone soup for our ramen is almost cooked to perfection. I can also prepare the other ingredients myself. Go and have a good chat with Naruto. Nangongja naturally saw that Mashiro was very happy that Naruto could come, so he said to Mashiro in a timely manner. After so many years, Nangongja and Mashiro no longer had the polite modesty between them. Since Nangongja said that he could handle it, Mashiro was very happy and pulled Naruto to the living room to chat. Seeing the two of them chatting so happily, Nangongja's mood was also a lot better. He turned around and began to prepare the various ingredients that were going to be used, preparing to make delicious ramen for his family and Naruto. Chapter 374. In fact, Japanese ramen has a disguised feeling of fast food, because whether it's the side dishes or the soup, they can all be prepared in advance. When it's time to make ramen, all you need to do is boil the ramen in boiling water, then pour it into a bowl, pour the soup over it, and add the side dishes, and the bowl of ramen is complete. Nangongja's ramen at noon today is the very famous Bodo ramen, which is a kind of ramen famous for its rich soup and slender noodles. In order to make the ramen look more appetizing, Nangongja also prepared crinoline, bean sprouts, green onions, fish cakes, dried bamboo shoots, and thick spiral-shaped barbecued pork rolls. Putting the ramen filled with white soup, slender noodles, and rich side dishes on a tray, Nangongja brought such a well-made ramen to the living room. Naruto was still chatting with Mashiro, talking about his experiences in the shinobi world, and he looked very happy. But when Nangongja walked into the living room with the ramen, Naruto's words came to an abrupt end. Turning his head stiffly, Naruto's eyes were filled with a fanatical look at the moment. Even if the taste of the ramen wasn't that good, Naruto still regards the 3 minutes as the most painful time for him. Not to mention a bowl of freshly made ramen that exudes a tempting aroma. Seeing Naruto's eagerness, Mashiro also moved aside a little, letting Nangongja directly put the bowl of ramen in front of Naruto. Under normal circumstances, if you want to eat, you have to eat at the dining table. But considering the degree of familiarity between him and Naruto, Mashiro also let Naruto sit in the living room and eat the ramen directly. How is it? Uncle's technique is pretty good, right? I said I'll let you eat your tongue into your stomach, so I'll let you eat your tongue into your stomach. As he spoke, Nangongja's face was filled with pride, as if he had accomplished something amazing. At this moment, Naruto was as devout as a believer. With a different kind of seriousness in his eyes, he picked up the chopsticks that Nangongzetsu casually put on the tray. He clasped his hands together and clamped the chopsticks between his thumb and index finger. He gently touched his forehead with his fingertips and said softly, "I'm going to eat." Naruto, who directly began his battle to conquer the ramen, gently separated the side dishes and noodles with chopsticks, holding the bowl with both hands, his mouth close to the edge of the bowl, obviously ready to taste the soup base of the ramen. Looking at Naruto's serious and devout appearance while eating the ramen, Nangongja and Mashiro simply couldn't connect this Naruto at this time with his usual lively appearance. Looking at Naruto like this, Nangongja couldn't help but smile, and then he also prepared the ramen for himself and Mashiro for lunch. On the other side, although Naruto looked particularly devout when eating, his speed was still very fast, and the noises he made when eating noodles were very loud. The sound of slurping was endless, and Nangongja was very happy to see that Naruto could like his ramen so much. But the so-called happiness was always temporary, and he didn't know when troubles would befall him. Naruto put the last piece of roasted pork in his bowl between his chopsticks, and his nose slightly opened to smell the wonderful aroma of the roasted pork. Just as this delicious roasted pork was about to enter his mouth, a burst of cramped knocking on the door interrupted Naruto's pilgrimage eating journey. Although Nangongja didn't look as serious as Naruto when eating ramen, he still didn't like people interrupting his meal like this. Sitting next to him, Mashiro was about to get up and open the door, Nangongja stood up and walked towards the door by himself. Without asking who was standing outside the door, Nangongja directly opened the door of his house. And standing outside the door was an Umbu ninja who was wrapped up in a thick cloak. Respectfully bowing to Nangongja, the Umbu ninja said to Nangongja, "Sorry to disturb you." Hearing the Umbu ninja's words, Nangongja also slightly loosened his frown, but he still said to the Umbu ninja, "Since you already know that you are rude, then I hope you can give me a reason to forgive your rudeness. This time, I'm not conveying orders to Nangong-sama, but to Naruto who is in your house. Sorry, due to my duty, I can't tell you the details of the truth. After all, an Umbu ninja is an Umbu ninja, and he still has the basic quality. Regarding the confidential information that may be involved in his mission, the Umbu ninja will never leak the slightest bit." Nangongja looked at the Umbu ninja and slowly moved his body away from the door, allowing the Umbu ninja to directly enter the yard. The Umbu ninja saw Naruto at a glance and directly walked in the direction of Naruto and slowly leaned over to Naruto's ear and whispered a few words. For a while, Naruto's face became rich, and the barbecued pork that attracted Naruto's attention no longer seemed important at this moment. "Has this information been confirmed?" As if to convince himself, Naruto asked the Umbu ninja. "It's true. The information was directly passed from the elders of Sunagakure. Hokage-sama has decided to let you and other people form a team to temporarily go to the Sunagakure to observe, and the main force will be dispatched when it is unavoidable." The Umbu ninja lowered his voice and explained to Naruto. Naruto nodded, stood up and said to Nangongja, "Uncle Nangong, I'm sorry. I suddenly have an urgent matter, so I'll go first. But uncle, your ramen is really delicious. If possible, I'd like to swallow my tongue into my stomach." After a slight salute to Nangongja, Naruto and the Umbu jumped on the eaves and poles toward the Hokage's office. Sunagakure, sure enough, it's not a cover-up. Nangongja actually heard the Umbu ninja's words very clearly, so combined with his own information, it's not difficult to know that the Akatsuki has already started to attack the Sunagakure. A ferocious tiger that had been dormant for so many years had finally bared its fangs. Don't know how many people, under the gaze of this tiger, will be unable to protect themselves? Strengthen the monitoring of the Sunagakure and the Akatsuki. If there is any abnormality, immediately report to me. If necessary, I can also directly go to the Sunagakure to participate in the battle. Looking at Mishiro sitting next to him, Nangongja firmly issued an order, and Mishiro nodded and passed Nangongja's order to the other members of Bloodcloth Pavilion. Chapter 375. Naruto, this is all the information we already know. Looking at Naruto standing in front of him with a serious look, Watergate slowly put the information in his hand with the word confidential written on his table. We have confirmed the authenticity of this letter through various means, but counting the time on the road and various delays, it is now the second day since Gaara was kidnapped. We know that Akatsuki has a great desire for Bijou, so we can't guarantee Gaara's safety at this moment. However, this letter is only sent to us in the name of Sunagakure, not in the name of the Land of Wind. So we can't send a large number of ninjas into the territory of the Land of Wind so rashly, so this time we can only send a small number of ninjas into the territory of the Land of Wind. And our final decision is to send Naruto, Haruno Sakura, and Hatake Kakashi to carry out this mission. The current mission level is A level, but it can be upgraded to S level or even higher depending on the situation. Looking at Naruto, Watergate really felt that his child had grown up for a while. According to his previous personality, after hearing that he thought that Gaara's life might be in danger, and that there was no way to send a large number of ninjas to increase the number of ninjas, it is estimated that he would immediately explode. But now, although there is still anger in his eyes, he can completely control himself. As the Jinchuriki of the irritable Kyuubi, being able to control his violent temperament to such a degree is already a very powerful thing. Watergate slowly walked to Naruto's side and put his hand on Naruto's shoulder, gently rubbing twice. Looking at his son who was almost as tall as himself, Watergate slowly put his mouth to Naruto's ear. "I only know that you are angry, and I know that you can't wait to get rid of those ninjas of Akatsuki at this moment. But don't do it, because you know the gap between you, and such a gap can't be made up for by a moment of courage. Remember your mission, you are a ninja for investigation, not a ninja for combat. No matter what, he had to protect himself and return safely. Mom and I will wait for you at home. We will wait for you to come back safe and sound. After hearing the first half of Watergate's words, Naruto became even angrier, because Naruto felt that Watergate didn't trust him. But later, Naruto found that it didn't seem to be what he thought. His father, who was called Hokage by everyone, was actually not that cold and ruthless. On the contrary, he seemed to have some faint concern for his son. Over the years, Naruto has traveled in the shinobi world and has seen all kinds of people and encountered all kinds of things. Gradually, he began to understand the emotional problems between people. Thinking back to the past few days when she was at home, Watergate was obviously very busy, but he still insisted on having dinner with his family at home. I know, I will come back safe and sound. Naruto's voice was slightly hoarse because of his emotional fluctuations, but it was obvious that the child had recovered his usual calmness at this moment. Sensei, in that case, we will go first. Kakashi looked at the interaction between the father and son, and for a moment, there was a little envy in his eyes. If his father was still alive, would he care about him like his sensei? Of course, these are meaningless assumptions. White Fang is already dead. Isn't he? Hearing Kakashi's words, Watergate also restored his majestic image as the Hokage. Be careful. No matter what happens, Wood Leaf will be your strongest support. Miyagi, the latest information is here. In Nangongja's house, Mashiro was holding a leather bag and walking in front of Nangongja at this moment. Nangongja took it and checked the ink on it. Then Nangongja gently opened the bag. Slowly taking the information in his hand and carefully observing the blurry photos, Nangongja's eyebrows slowly wrinkled a little bit. Akatsuki actually have a way to quickly seal a bijou and transfer it? Well, if they don't have such ability, how could they dare to attack a bijou? Over the years, although Nangongja was clear about Akatsuki's desire for bijou, Nangongja always thought that Akatsuki's plan was to capture bijou column force and then take him to Amigakure or other hidden places to seal him. After all, sealing a bijou not only requires an extremely powerful sealing technique, but also the right time, the right place, and the right people, all of which are indispensable. But according to this information, at this moment Akatsuki's ninja actually brought bijou column force, Gaara, to the country of Kawa, which is not that big. There is no possibility of sealing a bijou in such a place. Akatsuki naturally has its own method to quickly seal a bijou. If this is the case, Akatsuki is more dangerous than Nangongja thought. This time it seems that I have to go and see what is going on. If I can't figure out how Akatsuki seals a bijou, I really can't calm down. Looking at Mashiro standing beside him, Nangongja continued to say, "Help me prepare. I will leave for the country of Kawa immediately." Although Mashiro was reluctant to part with Nangongja's departure, he still had to get used to such a life after so many years. 3 years, this man used 3 years to smooth his edges and accompany his family. But at this moment, he once again needed to wear a robe and a sword. After bringing Nangongja's robe and Heaven's Disaster Sword to Nangongja, Nangongja stretched out his hand and gently stroked the dark pattern on his black robe, then grabbed the collar and shook it directly on his body. He kneeled on one knee, slightly bowed his body, and lifted his Heaven's Disaster Sword. After 3 years, the Yama wearing a black robe and carrying a black ancient sword finally returned again. "You're so white. I've really enjoyed the life I've been living for the past few years. Every day, I am busy with the trivial affairs of the family. Although it is complicated, I am also very happy. Just wait, as long as these things are over, our family will continue to live like this." Although his disguise was still that murderous Yama, the tenderness in Nangongja's eyes at this moment was no different from when he was buying vegetables and cooking in these years. "I believe in you, no matter when, no matter where." Looking at Nangongja, Mashiro said. Chapter 376. In a secret cave in the country of Kawano, all the members of Akatsuki were present. The 10 fingers of Geto were also full of people except for the left little finger. But except for Deidara and Sasori, the others were summoned by the secret ninjutsu of Akatsuki. Just before Sasori and Deidara kidnapped Gaara, the other 8 core members of Akatsuki had already arrived here. The sealing technique used to seal the tailed beast was naturally not so easy to perform. Akatsuki's sealing technique used the power of Geto. Under the guidance of the chakra of Akatsuki's members, the tailed beast was stripped and sealed in the body of Geto. At this moment, Gaara was being held in midair by an invisible force, and the 9 official members of Akatsuki continued to inject chakra into Geto. The 9 eyes of Geto that were originally closed were half opened at this moment, and the mouth that was originally closed was now slowly opening. Now, as the main caster, Pain was naturally the one who could sense the state of the Geto Golem the best. So at this moment, Pain suddenly made a lot of hand gestures with his fingers. There were even many unconventional hand gestures among them. Then he shouted, "Sealing technique. Illusory dragon 9 seals." The other members standing on the fingers of Geto looked pale at this moment, because the chakra in their bodies was being sucked out by Geto at a siphon speed. The huge loss of chakra is not something that anyone can bear, and the effect of this huge amount of chakra was naturally very outstanding. The mouth of the Geto which was originally slowly opening, was now completely opened. It even made people feel that the Geto was roaring at the top of its lungs due to the hunger in its stomach. 9 dragon-shaped chakra streams condensed from chakra gushed out from Geto mouth at this moment. The dragon-shaped chakra was like a real dragon at this moment, dancing in the air. Pain stared at Gaara, who was floating in the air. This was the first tailed beast that the Akatsuki had officially captured. Failure was not allowed. Controlling the 9 chakra to move slowly in the direction of Gaara, the 9 chakra that originally seemed to have no target were now like sharks that smelled blood. They automatically rushed in the direction of Gaara without Pain's guidance. 9 dragon-shaped chakra hovered in the air, gradually forming a spherical chakra ball that enveloped Gaara. However, the 9 dragon-shaped chakra figures were still clearly visible. As they continued to move, Gaara's face began to turn hideous and painful. Because the Ichibi Shikaku sealed in Gaara's body was connected to Gaara's life. Every bit of power extracted from the Ichibi Shikaku was the same as extracting Gaara's vitality. Gradually, the sphere formed by the 9 dragon-shaped chakra has changed from the original azure blue color to a slightly pale yellow color that looked a bit jumbled. Pain also looked at this chakra ball with satisfaction, and once again controlled the 9 chakra from the Geto to return to the Geto. Looking at the other 9 members of the Akatsuki, Pain said, "Today is just the beginning. The 9-tailed beasts will definitely be in our pocket, and we will bring eternal peace to the ninja world. After the other members have a good rest, you should speed up your task. As for Sasori and Deidara, you are, after all, outside our sphere of influence, and now you have consumed too much chakra because of using the ninjutsu of the Genryu 9 seals. So, I hope you can keep a low profile and leave the country of River and return to our sphere of influence as soon as possible." With that said, Pain glanced at Deidara's empty left arm without a trace. Deidara's ability mainly comes from the various applications of his own explosive clay. Usually, the explosive clay is mostly swallowed by the strange mouth of Deidara's hands. Deidara is now missing an arm, and his combat power has really decreased a lot. Pain was thinking about how to deal with Deidara at this moment. It's really hard to choose whether to get rid of him directly or let him continue to use his remaining power. Deidara seemed to be aware of Pain's gaze, and his eyes were full of resentment and madness. Who would want to be a person without an arm? But all of this was caused by his carelessness when fighting with Gaara. His arm was directly crushed into a pool of mud, and there was no possibility of repair. "Damn it," Deidara murmured softly. No one knew who he was venting his anger at. Sasori, who was standing next to Deidara, took a deep look at Deidara at this moment. Although Deidara was usually crazy, it was the first time he was full of resentment like this. Sasori's somewhat stupefied eyes slowly turned a few times. No one knew what he was thinking about, and he had already retracted his gaze. After hearing Pain's order, The projections of several other official members of the Akatsuki organization also disappeared one by one. The originally huge Geto Mazo also disappeared with a huge cloud of smoke at this moment. The originally huge cave had now become spacious and empty. Sasori and Deidara looked at each other and nodded to each other. Apparently, they were ready to leave this cave and return to the rain country as soon as possible to recuperate for a period of time. But man proposes, God disposes. Just as the two of them were about to move, Scorpion stopped dead. Our barrier has been tampered with. Previously, in order to ensure the smooth progress of the seal, Sasori and Deidara set up a protective barrier on the periphery of this cave. Although it had no attack power, its defensive ability was extremely strong. When several talismans as the eye of the array were touched, Sasori, who was the one who set up the barrier, naturally sensed it. Just in time, this uncle was worried about having nowhere to vent. Let them see this uncle's art. Deidara shouted with a trace of excitement, but he couldn't hide the panic from the bottom of his heart. After all, he had just suffered a heavy blow, and the chakra in his body was also greatly consumed. At this moment, could Deidara really display his full strength? You go first, I'll bring up the rear, Sasori said very coldly to Deidara. What do you mean? After hearing his partner's words, Deidara's complexion changed. You know what I mean. Now you are just a burden. Perhaps Sasori realized how hurtful his words were, or perhaps Sasori didn't realize it at all. But the effect of Sasori's words was indeed very outstanding. Although Deidara was indignant at this moment, he still used his remaining chakra and explosive clay to make a clay bird. He sat on it and flew out from a hidden vent at the top of the cave. Only a voice was still echoing in Sasori's ears. I'm leaving, but you can't die easily, otherwise I will laugh at you for a long time. Chapter 377. Boom! After a deafening roar, the huge rock that was blocking the entrance of the cave turned into huge fragments and scattered in all directions. The fragments contained great power as they shot out in all directions. Many of the fragments also contained great power as they rushed towards Scorpion. Sasori was currently shrouded in Filihu, and out of confidence in Filihu's defense, he didn't avoid these splashing stones. Although Filihu's red robe had become tattered due to the rubble, he was completely unscathed. Filihu's huge, bloated, and ugly body was revealed just like that. At the place where the boulder was broken, there were 4 people standing at the moment. Kakashi, who was still covering half of his face. Sakura, who was now slim and full of vitality. Naruto, whose bijou chakra was slightly exposed due to the change in his inner emotions. And an old man wrapped in a thick robe with wrinkles on his face. In fact, it wasn't just these people. After Naruto's group left, Watergate didn't feel at ease, so he sent Might Guy's 3rd squad, which is the ninja team of Hyuga, Niji, Tien, and Lee, to support Naruto's group. These 8 people also met at the entrance of the cave. In order to break the barrier on the boulder blocking the entrance, Guy, Lee, Niji, and Tien went to other places to break the barrier. But now they seemed to be entangled by something strange and couldn't go back for a while. Looking at the strange appearance of Filihu in front of her, Chio took a few steps forward and said to Sasori, My grandson, I haven't seen you for a long time, and you want to face your grandmother with this attitude? After hearing Chio's words, Sasori's slightly hoarse and strange voice came from Filihu. Grandma, you and I are both puppeteers. What's the point of saying such words? When I was in the village, Nyo opposed my pursuit of eternity, so I left the village and made my own puppets. This Filihu is one of my works, and as a puppeteer, it's ridiculous to give up on your own puppet and fight. Xiao Ying was also very curious about the thing in front of her that had been transformed into various mechanisms, but it had a human aura. But now, after listening to the conversation between Chio and Sasori, it seemed that this strange thing seemed to be a taboo puppet. Chio grandma, is this so-called Filihu a puppet or a human? When Gaara was taken away, Kankuro tracked Sasori and Deidara alone, but he was completely suppressed by Sasori, causing him serious injuries, and he was infected with a poison that was difficult to cure in the village. After Sakura's group arrived at the Sunagakure, They immediately treated Kankuro and had a good relationship with Chiyo. Hearing Sakura's question, Chiyo grandma's eyes flashed with grief, and she said to Sakura, "This kind of puppet is both a puppet and a human. Because its main material is the human body, and even some special puppets need to be transformed from living people. Because it's too cruel, our village listed such technology as forbidden, and it's not allowed to be learned and studied. But my grandson, Sasori, was not satisfied with just puppets made of wood and steel, and secretly began to study human puppets. This is the reason why he left Sunagakure." Just when Sakura was still digesting Chiyo grandma's cruel way of making puppets, Naruto let out a howl full of anger and sadness. Gaara dash. The conversation between Chiyo grandma and Sakura was interrupted in an instant, and both of them followed Naruto's line of sight. At this moment, the sand armor that had been protecting Gaara's body was broken, and his closed eyes and unperceivable breath proved one thing: the bijou has been removed, and Gaara has lost his life. "Sasori, that's the Kazekage of Sunagakure. That's the place where you grew up, the current guardian." Chiyo grandma finally couldn't maintain a calm tone and said to Sasori with a bit of grief, "Guardian? If the guardian is at this level, it's better to change it early. Grandma, you're already so old. It's better not to participate in such actions. Isn't it better to retire in Sunagakure with your second grandpa?" Sasori looked at the angry Chiyo, but his expression was normal, and it seemed that there was a bit of ridicule in his tone for Gaara's lack of strength. "You bastard!" Chiyo didn't react, but Naruto became angry because Sasori insulted his friend. The calmness and restraint he showed in front of Watergate was completely overwhelmed by his inner anger at this moment. "Naruto! Naruto!" Seeing that Naruto had already rushed forward, Sakura and Kakashi both wanted to stop Naruto's reckless action. But Naruto, who has mobilized part of the Nine Tails chakra at this moment, his speed skyrocketed, and he was about to reach Sasori. At this moment, a voice came from the sky. "Brother Sasori, I'm back to help you." Sasori used the long tail-like part of his back to attack Naruto quickly, temporarily forcing Naruto to retreat. His low voice seemed to have a different kind of anger as he said to the giant shadow flying in the sky, "Didn't I tell you to retreat temporarily, and I'll cover the rear?" The person who came back was naturally Deidara, who was just forced away by Sasori's attack. But at this moment, Deidara no longer had the obvious anger and resentment from before. Instead, he said to Sasori with a cheeky smile, "Brother Scorpion, I was scared by you just now, but on the way, I suddenly remembered that I couldn't just leave something here. Therefore, I came back to get it. I didn't do it to save you." Zhang Tai said with a smile. Deidara's address of brother made Sasori's originally wooden expression slightly loosen a little. "If you forgot something, take it and get out of here. I want to have a good chat with my grandmother. You're an outsider, so don't stay here." Sasori looked at Chiyo standing opposite him and said to Deidara. Chapter 378. Although Sakura was young and didn't have any in-depth research on the history of Sunagakure, so she didn't know the meaning of the name Sasori of the Red Sand for Sunagakure, but Sakura understood that Akatsuki was an organization full of Itachi Uchiha who slaughtered her entire family, and its members were definitely not good people. "Grandma Chiyo, what should we do?" With a bit of inquiry, Sakura asked Chiyo, who was also a veteran puppeteer. Sasori himself is a genius in puppeteering. After leaving Sunagakure these years, he is absolutely obsessed with the study of puppets. Although puppets are very inhumane, they are indeed superior to ordinary puppets. So I dare not say that there is a 100% way to defeat my grandson. I can only try my best. Chiyo put her hand into her loose robe, then waved her skinny palm, and a kunai suspended in front of her. Each kunai was connected to chakra wire and controlled by Chiyo. It seemed to be a tentative attack. Chiyo shot all the kunai suspended in front of her towards Sasori. The tail that just forced Naruto to retreat directly shot down the kunai flying toward him. Sasori seemed very dissatisfied and said to Chiyo, "Grandma, do you still need to test me like this between you and me? It's better to directly take out those puppets that you are proud of, and let's have a good competition of puppeteering techniques." 298 puppets. Including the two of you, I have a total of 300 puppets. Sasori's tone was very dull, but there was a bloody smell. 298 puppets made from human bodies. This was only the number of successful puppets. Who knows how many people became defective and were discarded. Looking at Chiyo and Sakura standing opposite him, who seemed to be discussing how to deal with him, Sasori was quite impatient and said to the two women opposite him, "You two, almost finished your discussion, right? I hate waiting for people." Sakura and Chiyo looked at each other, nodded to each other and rushed side by side towards Sasori. Seeing that the two of them didn't use any long-range attacks and instead rushed toward him, Sasori made a prompt decision. He activated the mechanism in his Filyu's mouth. Poisonous needles wrapped in green light flew toward Chiyo and Sakura. Although Chiyo was old, her combat experience was extremely rich. She didn't make any big movements. She tilted her body, jumped up slightly, and squatted down. The dense poison needles that were flying towards her were actually dodged by Chiyo. On the other side, Sakura used her hands to support herself on the ground and rolled a few times to avoid all the poisonous needles. Looking at Chiyo and Sakura, Sasori also adjusted his attitude. On the other hand, Sakura relied on her physique to quickly close in on Failyohu. Failyohu was a puppet that Sasori used to defend his body. Naturally, it wasn't limited to long-range attacks. Therefore, the sharp blade on its back that resembled a tail moved at this moment. But the moment it moved, Sasori realized that something was amiss. The tail that was about to strike Sakura's face with extreme speed actually stopped in midair. The sharp blade was only a hair's breadth away from Sakura, but it couldn't advance any further. Cherry Blossom Rush. Sakura silently mustered her monster strength. She exerted force from her feet to her entire body. Small pieces of gravel wrapped in the dust were as beautiful as the withered cherry blossom petals in spring. However, such beauty was also accompanied by great danger. Monstrous strength was never a simple thing. Xiaoying took advantage of the momentary pause. Her black-gloved fist landed heavily on Failyohu's body, smashing him into the ground and creating a huge cloud of dust. A figure rushed out of the dust at an extremely fast speed. Needless to say, it must be Sasori who was hiding in Failyohu. "Sasori, you're finally willing to..." Chiyo looked at Sasori, who rushed out of the dust. She was about to speak, but she stopped. His eyes, which were originally a little cloudy and half-closed, were now wide open, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing in front of him. Xiaoying was also slightly relieved from the sudden increase in speed and strength. She followed Chiyo's line of sight and looked at the scorpion of the crimson sand that had been hiding in the Filyu. His wine-red hair and slightly lazy demeanor were so pleasing to the eye. However, no matter how one looked at him, he looked like he was in his teens or 20s. He didn't look like the 30-year-old uncle that Chiyo had mentioned. Just as he was about to ask Chiyo if this person was really Scorpio of the red sand, Chiyo's face slowly became gloomy. "You actually transformed yourself into a puppet?" Sakura was surprised when she heard Chiyo's words. She carefully observed Sasori, who was standing near her. She found that although Sasori's robe was exactly the same as a normal person, she couldn't see the rise and fall of his chest when he breathed. Did he really transform himself into a puppet? Humans are simply too fragile of a life form. Whether their internal organs are damaged or a large amount of blood loss, human beings will lose their lives. Not to mention that there are diseases and aging which are difficult to resist death. So I began to study other people. I hope that I can make people's lives continue. My experiment, my research, I finally succeeded. I am the first person in this world who is both a human and a puppet. There is no disease, no aging, I can continue my life. This is... how wonderful! With that, Sasori's eyes were filled with a different kind of fanaticism. Having lost his parents, Scorpio's hatred for the fragile life of human beings and his yearning for eternity drove him to complete such a crazy and incomparably genius research. "Grandma, as long as you are willing, I can make you live forever like me. From now on, you and I can always be together like this." After expressing his pursuit of eternity, Sasori began to ask Chiyo if she was willing to live. Perhaps in Sasori's view, Chiyo was almost at the end of her life. With a chance to live in front of her, how could she give up? Humans were creatures that cherished their lives the most. Chapter 379. Big Brother is still as cold as ever. Looking at Sasori, who was obviously less indifferent than usual, Deidara still said that Sasori was too cold. He didn't know why, but he felt a sense of incongruity. Don't worry, Big Brother. I will take the things and leave. Maybe it will be good for you and Grandma to have a good chat. With that, a smile appeared on Deidara's face. The huge clay bird he was sitting on changed from a hovering posture in the sky to a diving posture in an instant. Like an eagle preying on a hare, the clay bird also rushed to the side of Gaara, who was lying on the ground with wounds all over his body, and grabbed Gaara with its claws. Big Brother, how is it? Now you can talk to Grandma better, right? Looking at Sasori standing on the ground, Deidara laughed proudly. Although the strength of Naruto and Sakura is not so widely known, Kakashi from With Leaf and Chiyo Momo, the consultant of Sand Ninja's elder group, are both well-known figures. No matter how strong a person is, as long as they don't reach a certain limit, they will eventually be suppressed by numbers. Deidara wanted to take Gaara's body at the moment to attract some of the power to increase Sasori's chances of survival. Sasori, Chiyo Momo, and Kakashi understood such a small idea. Even Sakura and Naruto vaguely felt that they had grasped something. In fact, the best plan now is for the four of them to go together and directly surround Sasori. The most effective way is to concentrate their strength and defeat him one by one. After all, although Gaara is very important, he is just a corpse. It is difficult to get it back, but it is not so troublesome to destroy it. But no matter who it is, they can't choose to do this because Gaara is not just an ordinary ninja, but also the Kazekage of the Sand Village in the Land of Wind. The body of a person with such identity and status cannot be tarnished like this. What's more, among With Leaf's group, Naruto and Sakura also have some friendship with Gaara. Even Naruto has a feeling of appreciation for Gaara. How can he tolerate someone not leaving Gaara's body intact? As for Chiyo Momo, as the consultant of Sand Village's elder group, she naturally has to maintain the dignity of Sand Village's Kazekage. And from Chiyo's point of view, it was her own fault for forcing Raza to turn Gaara into a Jinchuriki, which directly led to Gaara's sad life. Although Gaara had already gotten over it, the older Chiyo got, the more she blamed herself. You bastard! Leave Gaara. Among them, Naruto couldn't hold it in the sky. Naruto's. At this moment, Naruto shouted at Deidara in the sky, expressing the uncontrollable indignation in his chest. What can best reflect Naruto's mood is naturally the violent aura slowly released from Naruto's body, his eyes getting redder and redder, and his canine teeth getting sharper and sharper. So that's how it is. With Leaf also sent their man column force over. It's really interesting. After catching a column force, they can also catch another column force. Find a way to get this column force in their hands, right? Looking at Naruto, who was wantonly venting his inner anger below, Deidara slowly rubbed his own ring on his index finger with his remaining left thumb, and inputted his chakra into it with some frequency, as if he was sending some information. Hey, the kid with the long beard below, you want this guy's body? With that, Deidara also pointed to Gaara, who was caught by the clay bird under his feet. Such frivolous behavior made Naruto even angrier. He shouted at Deidara in the sky, "You bastard! Don't always talk nonsense in the sky. If you have the ability, come down and let Master Naruto teach you how to be a good person." Under normal circumstances, it was Deidara who called himself Master to ridicule others. Today it was Deidara who was ridiculed by Naruto. He also felt a different kind of interest for a while. "Boy, do you think I'm afraid of you?" Deidara seemed to be interested. He slightly lowered the height of his clay bird, but he still kept a safe distance and said to Naruto below him, "If you want this guy's body, fight with me in another place. This is the battlefield left for my elder brother and his grandmother. Let's go then. Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Kakashi just wanted to stop Naruto and Deidara from continuing to talk, because Kakashi had clearly felt that chakra on Naruto was slowly becoming irritable. It was very likely that the Nine Tails chakra had affected Naruto's thinking. At this moment, Naruto was no longer rational and extremely irritable. But Naruto chased directly in the direction of Deidara's clay bird. Kakashi looked back at Sakura and Chio. He felt that Chio, who was familiar with the battle of puppeteers, and Sakura, who was proficient in detoxification and monstrous strength, should be able to hold on for a while under Sasori's attack. Therefore, he also caught up with Naruto's departing figure in a few flashes. Watching Deidara leave with Naruto and Kakashi, Sasori also turned his gaze back to his grandmother Chio. "Grandma, to be honest, I don't want to do anything to you. If you decide to go back now, I will never stop you." Hearing Sasori's words, Chio sneered without a trace, as if she had heard something very funny. "Sasori, if it were any other situation, Grandma would never do anything to you. Even when you left Sunagakure, Grandma didn't directly kill you. But this time you've gone too far. The leader of Sunagakure was kidnapped by you to extract Bijou, and all kinds of losses are shocking. I'm your grandmother, but I'm also a ninja of Sunagakure." After listening to Chio's words, Sasori seemed to be touched by something. His originally calm, hoarse, and low voice suddenly raised a lot and said to Chio, "Don't mention them. Don't mention Sunagakure. Don't mention." There are many reasons for Sasori's defection from Sunagakure. There are reasons for his addiction to the study of puppets, and also his disgust for Sunagakure itself. However, when Grandma Chio was young, she was busy with various affairs in Sunagakure and ignored Sasori's emotions. Concealing the news of his parents' death is also an extremely important reason. This is the urgency in Sasori's heart, but at this moment, it was directly said by Chio. In fact, when Chio said these words, she already regretted it, but what's the use of regret? Today, Chio came to make up for her mistakes. Chapter 380. Sasori, do you really think I care about whether I can live long or not? Hearing Sasori's almost tempting words, Chio smiled as if she didn't care at all. She even thought that Sasori's words were funny. "In my life, I've really experienced too much. Starting from a basic puppet master in Sunagakure, I slowly climbed step by step to the position of Sunagakure's elder group consultant. Not to say that I'm above thousands of people, but I'm also a high position. For so many years, I've done a lot of things that I think are right, and I've also done a lot of things that I know are wrong, but I have to do it. The ups and downs of life, I don't want to taste it anymore. Maybe in your opinion, having a long life is an extremely happy thing, but the world is a sea of bitterness, and life is also a time of ups and downs in the sea of bitterness. There's no need to be so persistent." Chio's wrinkled face showed a kind smile at the moment. Although it was not so beautiful, it was so warm. For a while, Sasori was a little stunned. Involuntarily, Sasori's mind slowly emerged the time when he and his grandmother depended on each other. At this moment, he didn't know why, but he felt that it was unexpectedly beautiful. But Sasori fiercely cut off this idea in his head. "Eternity is my pursuit. I've been walking on the road of eternity. The reason why my grandmother denied me so much is that she didn't realize how happy eternity is. As long as I can transform my grandmother into the same existence as myself, I can definitely let my grandmother understand me. Moreover, Orochimaru's Edo Tensei is a ninjutsu that can summon the soul of a person. As long as my spy can get this ninjutsu from Orochimaru, coupled with my top puppet technique, I can resurrect my dead parents. My dream, the warm home I yearn for, seems to be getting closer and closer to me at this moment. How can I give up at such a moment?" He stretched out his hand and took out a scroll from his sleeve. He slowly opened the scroll, and a big 3 was written in a complicated circle. He injected chakra into the scroll, and a humanoid puppet was released from the scroll. 3 generations of Kazekage? The moment she saw the puppet, Chio couldn't help but exclaim, "I didn't expect Akatsuki to have such a deep enmity with Sunagakure." The 3 generations Kazekage who suddenly disappeared, the 4th Kazekage who was killed by Orochimaru's plan, and the 5th Kazekage whose life you just took. All of you, All of you have committed grave sins. Grandma, don't say that. Hearing Chiyo's words, Sasori began to deny. The death of 3 generations Kazekage and 5th Kazekage is indeed related to me. But that guy Orochimaru has already betrayed Akatsuki organization. This snake's den is everywhere, and even the leader of our organization gave up after chasing him for a while. As Scorpion spoke, his face revealed a secret smile that only he knew. Sakura, on the other hand, was lost in thought. Sakura's mind was filled with Sasuke's voice and appearance, and the pain he felt when he was determined to leave with Leaf. Do you know where Orochimaru is? Sakura's voice was a bit low, as if she was trying to suppress her emotions, but she still said to Sasori in a bad tone. Scorpion was an extremely arrogant person. When he heard Xiao Ying's questioning tone, his slightly immature face had already furrowed his brows slightly. Looking at Sakura, Sasori slowly raised his hand, and the puppet controlled by 3 generations of Kazekage moved instantly and rushed to the front of Sakura at a very fast speed. The right hand of 3 generations of Kazekage puppet turned into a sharp blade with a burst of mechanical sound. Chiyo saw that Sakura didn't dodge and quickly manipulated a fragment of Hirajutsu to block in front of Sakura, hoping to block the aggressive attack of this puppet. However, this fragment of Hirajutsu, which was obviously made of special materials, was torn apart wantonly like a piece of cloth under the attack of the Kazekage puppet's sharp blade. If one observed carefully, it wasn't difficult to see that although the sharp blade of the Kazekage puppet's right hand looked cold, there was a small black iron sand floating on it. This is naturally the iron sand that can be controlled by 3 generations of Kazekage's unique secret technique, magnet release. It seems that Sasori has made a lot of progress compared to when he was in the blood-clothed pavilion. He no longer used the magnet release of 3 generations of Kazekage's rigid technique, but used it flexibly on the puppet's body. Sasori, didn't your grandmother tell you to be respectful and gentle to women? Chiyo's slightly old voice sounded, as if she was blaming Sasori. When Sasori followed the voice and looked at his grandmother, he found that in front of Chiyo, there were 2 puppets that he was very familiar with. This is your father and mother. I haven't seen them for so many years. Don't you miss them? They are nothing but insignificant puppets. They are all made by me, so I know their ability best. Grandma, don't tell me you took them out just to make some psychological attack? Looking at these 2 puppets that he had personally made, Sasori forced himself to maintain a calm state of mind. These are nothing but 2 puppets. As long as I can succeed, I will have conscious parents who can love me, and not 2 ice-cold puppets. I can't lose. He still had a reason to continue winning. Looking at Sasori's appearance at this moment, Chiyo didn't know why her heart was also faintly aching. Although her grandson was very intelligent since childhood, but he was also extremely stubborn. As long as he decided to do something, he would not give in the slightest. This time it seems that Sasori is beginning to be obsessed with something, so what can I do? After thinking about it, perhaps I can only do my best to stop him, right? No matter what price I have to pay, I can't let my grandson continue to make mistakes. Akatsuki organization is not a good place, and I can't let Sasori stay in such a place. Even if I have to kill my grandson, I can't let my grandson make more irreparable mistakes. Chapter 381. Let's put aside the battle between Sasori, Chiyo, and Sakura for the time being. Let's turn our attention to Kakashi and Naruto, who had just chased Deidara away. Looking at Deidara sitting on a huge stone not far from him, Kakashi didn't know why, but a different kind of tension suddenly emerged in his heart. When Sakura saved Kankuro in the Sunigakure, Baki, who served as the Kazekage's assistant in the Sunigakure, also told him some information about the 2 ninjas who attacked the Sunigakure this time. This Deidara in front of him, in Baki's words, is a very destructive character who is good at sneaking in and is close to a core destroyer. Generally, such ninjas are the most vigilant target in the war, but in such a small-scale battle, they are also the most vulnerable ninjas because most of them are weak in single attacks. Kakashi, who was full of confidence, at this moment, couldn't help but feel some inexplicable panic in his heart. Oh? He's worthy of being a veteran Jonin of Konoha. He noticed that something was wrong so quickly, but unfortunately you are still one step behind. You have now completely fallen into this uncle's trap. Although I don't want to cooperate with this guy, but since he was sent by the boss, there is no other way. Deidara looked at Kakashi with an expression of success, but when Deidara said, "that guy," the resentment from the depths of his heart was so clear, as if this person has a big hatred with Deidara. It seems that the internal affairs of Akatsuki are not so harmonious. Kakashi quietly put this information in his heart, although he doesn't know whether it will be useful or not, but there is always some harvest. Putting aside these complicated thoughts, Kakashi slowly moved his steps closer to Naruto, and Naruto seemed to have calmed down slightly because of the change in atmosphere. He also took the initiative to approach his instructor Kakashi and cooperated with him to guard the surroundings. I say, "Dead ale, you keep calling my partner that guy. That guy, that guy, that guy. That makes me very unhappy." Just when the scene was dead silent, a somewhat rough voice sounded in everyone's ears. Then, the owner of this voice, a tall and burly man with a bluish face that resembled a shark, appeared in everyone's eyes. Facing Kisame's half-threatening, half-joking words, Deidara also said with a bad mood, "Humph, that guy regards my beautiful art as nothing. Want me to respect him is simply a joke." Art. Listening to Deidara's words, Kisame slowly opened his mouth, revealing his sharp teeth, and said to Deidara, "I don't understand so much about art in your mouth. In my opinion, using my shark muscles to torture my opponent is the most exciting time. Ho, 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 ho." While speaking, the ghost mermaid let out an ear-piercing laugh. Kisame. Shut up. Just when Kisame was laughing wantonly, a slightly cold voice sounded behind Kisame. Dressed in the iconic Akatsuki uniform with black background and red clouds, it looked like a medium-length hair with a middle parting. Of course, what was more eye-catching was the pair of 3 Tomo Sharingan that was constantly rotating in the eye sockets. Itachi Uchiha. Looking at this person, Naruto slowly called out his name. This was both Sasuke's brother and the man who had been chasing him and Jiraiya in the ninja world for nearly 2 years. And Kisame, who originally looked very rampant, actually quieted down after hearing Itachi's voice. "Long time no see, Kakashi Hatake." After greeting Kakashi, he looked at Naruto and said, "We meet again, Uzumaki Naruto." But at this moment, Kakashi had no desire to talk to Itachi Uchiha at all. Instead, his eyes were constantly moving between Deidara, Kisame, and Itachi Uchiha. These 3 people were not easy to deal with. If it was only one of them, Kakashi believed that he could cooperate with Naruto to defeat the other party. If there were 2 people, Kakashi could guarantee that he could protect their lives and leave safely with all his strength. But now, Kakashi was facing 3 powerful people, and Kakashi was not sure at all. "Naruto." Kakashi lowered his voice and said to Naruto, "I can stop these guys for a while. You must run away as soon as you see the opportunity. You are the column force of our village. You can't fall into the hands of Akatsuki organization like this, you know?" Naruto wanted to refute Kakashi, but what greeted Naruto was Kakashi's serious eyes. Naruto was naturally more aware than Kakashi of Akatsuki organization's desire for the 9 tails in his body. Leaving at this time was indeed the most correct choice. But Naruto couldn't help but remember the time when he had just become a genin, Kakashi's theory about trash and scum. In the constant struggle, Naruto's expression changed from struggle to confusion, and from confusion to certainty, as if there was a voice in his heart that helped Naruto make up his mind. Ninjutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. With a simple handprint in his hand, Shadow Clone Jutsu was skillfully displayed by Naruto. A total of 5 shadow clones, including the main body, helped each other at this moment. Each of them was holding a Rasengan in their hand, and directly rushed in the direction of Kisame, Deidara, and Itachi. "Hey! Futon! Rasengan!" The 5 shadow clones shouted the name of Rasengan together, staggered forward with each other to confuse the opponent's line of sight. Then suddenly, the 5 shadow clones were divided into 3 groups, 2 of which had 2 Naruto holding Rasengan, and one group had only one Rasengan holding Naruto. A group of 2 people rushed toward Itachi and Kisame, and a group of 1 person rushed toward Deidara. The change in the situation is very obvious. It seems that in Naruto's heart, Itachi, Uchiha, and Kisame are much more dangerous than Deidara. So he made such a distribution, right? Itachi and Kisame naturally didn't have any idea, but Deidara, who has always seemed to be unruly but actually cares about the attitude of others towards him, was full of resentment. What, you think highly of Itachi and Kisame, but look down on me, looking at Naruto rushing toward him. Although he didn't know whether it was the main body or the shadow clone, Deidara was ready to directly blow this Naruto rushing toward him into powder. Chapter 382. When Itachi, Uchiha, Kisame, and Deidara thought that they had seen through Naruto's attack trajectory, Naruto's 2 groups of 2 suddenly turned their feet, and all of them directly rushed towards Deidara. The 3 members of Akatsuki weren't standing very far away. In addition, Naruto's main body and clones had accelerated over a relatively long distance before. Suddenly, they changed direction. It was unknown whether it was Naruto's main body or clones, but their speed was also very fast. For a moment, Naruto, who should have been attacking 3 people separately, had already pressed 5 Rasengan in his hand towards Deidara's face. Naruto's behavior was actually traceable. Just now, when he was attacking and sprinting, Naruto constantly changed his pace in order to test the best turning angle to maintain his speed. But at that time, who would have thought that Naruto would expose his back to the other 2 members of Akatsuki and turn to besiege 1 person? After all, Naruto's main body is Naruto's main body really among them? After all, the battlefield is a fast-paced place, and in many cases, it's impossible to think carefully. On the contrary, Kakashi, who was neither the attacker nor the defender, was standing on the side of the battlefield ready to support Naruto at any time, could see it more clearly. Naruto was no longer the same as before, who only knew how to charge blindly. At this moment, Naruto had begun to try to use tactics flexibly and speculate the enemy's psychology. Now looking at the 5 Naruto rushing towards Deidara, Kakashi also quickly took out kunai and shurikens from his body, and used his only Sharingan to the extreme, and began to block Itachi, Uchiha, and Kisame to help Deidara out of the predicament. Unexpectedly, the kunai and shurikens, which he thought could only play a role in restraining Itachi, Uchiha, and Kisame at this moment, seemed to be really exhausting to deal with them. Although their Sharingan couldn't be faked, Kakashi felt that there seemed to be something wrong with their bodies. When dodging kunai and shurikens, there was always a certain degree of stiffness. Although he didn't know the reason, Kakashi believed that if Itachi, Uchiha, and Kisame were in this state, he could defeat them. Just when Kakashi was still confidently beginning to analyze his victory record, Deidara, who was originally full of confidence, had a drastic change in his expression at this moment. Although he usually had a fearless appearance, when a crisis really befell him without warning, the fear that came from the bottom of his heart could not be concealed. Naruto saw all of this, and even in Naruto's mind, the scene of Deidara's body being attacked by 5 Rasengan began to emerge. When the Rasengan got closer and closer to his body, Deidara's originally very obvious expression of fear seemed to solidify and became stiff for some reason. Naruto felt that something was wrong and wanted to stop the attack, but Deidara's body suddenly faded from its original color and became a color similar to the explosive clay that Deidara often used. But obviously, the purity was lower. It may be that ordinary soil was used, and then the explosive clay was mixed to complete the purpose of plasticity and control. Naruto tried his best to stop his body, but Deidara, who was molded by clay, suddenly sprang out several hands made of clay, firmly entangling all the 5 shadow clones of Naruto who were close to him. Ha ha ha! I thought I could only blow up one of the clones to vent my anger, but I didn't expect that they were all aimed at me. I like it very much. Since I like it, I should let you become part of my art. Pseudo. C3. 18. Art is explosion. Standing a little further away, when the word explosion came out of Deidara's mouth, the clay puppet called Pseudo. 18 by Deidara also began to swell. Although there was no earth-shattering explosion like the one that attacked Sunagakure before, it was still powerful enough. Layers of airwaves emanated from the center of the explosion, blowing away Kakashi's shurikens and kunai. Itachi, Uchiha, and Kisame quickly used chakra to stabilize their bodies, but their clothes were still blown by the strong wind. What a beautiful scene! If it weren't for saving Column Force's life, this explosion could be at least 3 times stronger. It seemed that it was a pity. Deidara comforted himself. Wind release, breakthrough. Itachi Uchiha's cold voice suddenly sounded. At this moment, Itachi's hand seals were flying, and a ninjutsu was quickly completed. Although this wind release is not a powerful ninjutsu, it is easy to blow away the smoke that shrouded Sudo. 18. After all, Itachi Uchiha, who has rich combat experience and meticulous mind, has noticed that something is wrong at this moment. Did he start to use wind release to disperse the smoke and confirm his thoughts? Just when the wind was about to approach the thick smoke, a somewhat muffled sound came from under Dedale's feet. "Caught you, you bastard." This voice was so familiar it was obviously Naruto's voice. Itachi Uchiha also instantly understood what the vague premonition in his heart was about. It turned out that the 5 Naruto just now were all shadow clones used to confuse the public. Was the real killer hiding underground? The ground instantly burst open, and Naruto's figure flew out of it. At the same time, Naruto also shouted in his mouth, "Wind release, Rasengan." Naruto actually changed the method of using shadow clones to assist in Rasengan. At this moment, he has already cast Rasengan with one hand. But this Rasengan obviously does not have the stable light that it usually has. Instead, it is bright for a while and dark for a while. It looks like it may explode at any time. Yes, Naruto actually hasn't mastered the method of one-handed Rasengan at the moment, but in order not to waste such a surprise attack opportunity, Naruto is also betting that his one-handed Rasengan will succeed. Using his signature ninjutsu Rasengan at an amazing speed, Naruto's blow hit Deidara's chin. The huge impact directly sent Deidara flying, and Naruto also stood in place with a tired look, gasping quickly. Who would have thought that Naruto has grown to such an extent? Chapter 383. Naruto has been traveling with Jiraiya in the ninja world during this period of time, and he has indeed grown a lot, but Itachi Uchiha, who has been chasing Naruto and Jiraiya with Kisame, understood that the current Naruto's fighting mentality was completely different from the hot-blooded idiot Uzumaki Naruto he had a brief confrontation with not long ago. Such a double trap. Can Naruto really come up with it? However, although Itachi felt that he might have touched the truth of something, he did not remind Kisame, who seemed eager to try next to him. "Ha ha ha, Deidara, that kid is only good with his mouth. Just let me catch you and bring you back. This time there is no old guy Jiraiya following you. Kakashi alone can't do anything." Kisame was very clear about his current state. He and his partner Itachi Uchiha did not use their real bodies to support Deidara at the moment. After all, there are only a few official members of Akatsuki, and the ninja world is very large. Most of the time, it is difficult for Akatsuki to gather all their core members together. Itachi and Kisame were in a rather distant place at the moment, but just now Deidara urgently contacted Akatsuki through the ring on his hand, explaining that he now met the Nine Tails Column Force with Kakashi. This is a good opportunity to capture Column Force. After thinking about it a few times, Pain felt that it was a good choice to capture Naruto at this time, so he began to use one of his forbidden jutsu, Elephant Shift Jutsu, to let Kisame and Itachi Uchiha, the 2 members of Akatsuki who can be said to know Uzumaki Naruto the best, come in this way. But after all, it is not the real body. Using Elephant Shift Jutsu, to use the method of sacrifice to let Itachi Uchiha and Kisame come to support. This Elephant Shift Jutsu can only maintain 1/3 of the chakra of the real body, and most of the time it can't be controlled so perfectly. Even so, as Kisame who has a lot of chakra and Itachi Uchiha who is proficient in ninjutsu and jinjutsu, they still have the ability to suppress and entangle Kakashi. Taking advantage of this time, Deidara can capture Uzumaki Naruto. Isn't everything just right? But he didn't expect that the battle had just begun and Deidara was knocked out directly. According to Itachi Uchiha's character, he will turn around and retreat at this time. Usually, this is the elephant shift jutsu. However, the body created by the elephant rotation technique would not be affected even if it died. Instead, Itachi was very curious about who was hiding behind it. Even at this moment, himself slowly opened his Sharan, slowly opening his Sharingan, and then began to join the battle, began to slowly himself at this moment. After a round of dazzling hand speed battle, the battle between Chiyo and Sasori also came to an end. After all, the puppets of 3 generations Kazekage were more powerful than ordinary puppets. Even if Chiyo had used the father and mother puppets that she had modified to the extreme, it was difficult to bridge the gap in strength. Relying on the magnetic release of 3 generations Kazekage puppets, she controlled the magnetic iron sand scorpion to directly destroy the father puppet. In order to help Sakura avoid the magnetic attack, Chiyo could only control the mother puppet to hold Sakura and escape in embarrassment. But such a price made Chiyo lose the puppet that protected her, directly exposing herself in front of Sasori. Oh my god, when did you become so weak? It turns out that the terrifying Chiyo who could give up her son and daughter-in-law without blinking her eyes, is it really because of her age that she became indecisive? In Sasori's impression, sometimes the reason for his parents' death was that Chiyo didn't give them the protection they deserved. Seeing that at this moment, Chiyo actually risked her own protection to save Sakura. A ninja from Woodleaf, Sasori couldn't help but ridicule. It turned out to be like this, you have such a reason to resent me. In fact, I occasionally resent myself. I was the commander of the front line at that time, but why didn't I send a powerful ninja to protect my child? But when I think about it, although I resent myself so much, I don't regret my actions at that time. Looking at her grandson, Chiyo's face was full of sadness, but her eyes were particularly firm. Sunagakure is not my family's land, and I can't trample the interests of Sunagakure under my feet because of my personal feelings. Sunagakure is located in the land of wind, and the environment is harsh. Therefore, we try our best to seize some places with abundant water and grass to support our people. But we are weak, and we don't have the powerful strength of Woodleaf. If I have to transfer the precious high-end strength of the front line to protect my family, I can't do such a thing. Sunagakure, Sunagakure, Sunagakure. Looking at Chiyo, Sasori's javelin became a little dull after transforming himself into a puppet, but he didn't know why at this moment. It was particularly fierce. You only have your Sunagakure in your heart, but I am different. What I care about has always been my family, my parents, and even my grandma. Sasori directly raised his hand, and between the jumping of his fingers, he manipulated the puppet of 3 generations Kazekage to use magnet release. Iron sand balls the size of marbles were suspended in the air, and it seemed that there were hundreds of them. If you can save yourself, you can also save this girl. But you only have one puppet. Can you save both of you at the same time? Magnet release. Double iron sand time rain. After Sasori shouted the name of the move, the black iron sand balls were like arrows leaving the string, attacking Sakura and Chiyo. Puff, puff, Sakura and Chiyo tried their best to avoid such attacks. But after all, the number of iron sandballs was too much, and gradually, whether it was Sakura or Chiyo, they couldn't support it. At the moment when she found that Sakura couldn't support it, Chiyo's left hand's finger jumped, and the mother puppet, which was originally near Sakura, rushed to the front of Sakura. The puppet opened its hands and rushed straight to the front. A chakra shield quickly unfolded, and Sakura's crotch was attacked. Seeing that Chiyo no longer had any puppets to block the attack, Sasori manipulated even more iron sand to attack Chiyo. The powerful attack shrouded Chiyo in a huge cloud of smoke, making it impossible to see the specific situation. Chapter 384. When the smoke and dust dissipated, Chiyo's figure was still standing in place. However, Chiyo raised her right arm and a chakra shield appeared, just like the chakra shield of Father And mother. If you look closely, it's not difficult to find that Chiyo also transformed her right arm into a puppet. My grandmother. Aren't you most disgusted with the transformation of the human body? But in the end, you still transformed part of your body into a puppet. This is the road to the future, the road to eternity. Sasori's words really made Chiyo speechless for a while. Chiyo has always accused Sasori of transforming the human body into a puppet, but didn't she also transform her own body? She removed her seemingly crippled right arm from the elbow joint and hid the remaining half of her right arm in a wide robe. When Sakura saw that Chiyo's arm couldn't be used, she naturally quickly went to Chiyo's side and stood in front of her. It looked like she wanted to protect Chiyo. At this time, Chiyo's old figure gently floated to Sakura's ear. Sakura, you still have a chance to escape. Look at my expression. Once I find a chance to entangle Sasori, you will leave immediately. Hearing Chiyo's words, Sakura turned her head and looked at Chiyo. Looking at this old face full of wrinkles, Sakura's heart couldn't be ruthless. Was he really going to let an old man be his shield and leave by himself? What a joke. Chiyo grandma, you know who my master is, right? As Tsunade Haime's disciple, how can I be afraid of fighting? With that, Sakura's face showed a valiant smile. In Chiyo's eyes, this child was very similar to the high-spirited Tsunade she saw on the battlefield in the early years. Sure enough, master and disciple? Even the temper is the same. Looking at Sakura, Chiyo's eyes didn't know whether it was joy or envy, but it was so complicated. Tsunade, this violent woman, also has a good successor. But her successor is... Hasn't the battle just begun? Sakura looked at Sasori as the chakra in her body slowly circulated and condensed. His feet were slightly separated, with one foot in front and one foot behind. He squatted down slightly and clenched his fists. His right fist was placed beside his waist and his left fist was placed in front of him. At this moment, his eyes suddenly became sharp, as if a switch had been turned on. Ho! With a soft shout, Sakura stomped her feet and shot out like an arrow. Looking at Sakura, who was rushing straight towards him, Sasori didn't dare to underestimate her. He controlled 3 generations of Kazekage to continuously use magnet release to control Iron Sand to attack Sakura. However, for some reason, Sakura was able to dodge the increasingly dense Iron Sand attacks. Sasori also seemed to find that such scattered and easily detected long-range attacks didn't seem to be able to hit Sakura, who was too agile. It seemed that he could only attack in close range. Scorpion, who had decided on the attack strategy, also made a prompt decision, directly manipulating his wind shadow puppet to rush towards Sakura. On the way, all kinds of melee weapons on 3 generations of Kazekage were released. Their palms turned into 2 sharp blades, and their elbows popped out with barbs. At this moment, the 3 generations of Kazekage seemed to have become a machine that could cause a bloody storm at any time. Not only these melee weapons, the 3 generations of Kazekage's body constantly scattered black iron sand into the air, slowly converging into a ribbon-like thing that wrapped around the 3 generations of Kazekage's body, protecting the 3 generations of Kazekage's body. If it was an ordinary melee taijutsu ninja, it would be extremely difficult to fight against such an enemy, but at this moment Sakura not only learned monster strength but also learned fist techniques from Nangongja for a long time. Unlike Tsunade's strength, Nangongja taught Sakura how to use strength. Cannon fist, air cannon. Sakura's right fist, which was originally placed on the side of her waist, was blasted out like a fierce fire at this moment. Her originally clenched fist was slightly loosened at this moment, allowing the air to flow in her fist. Bang! Bang! A sharp sound was emitted from the center of her fist. Sakura's right fist was wrapped in a layer of energy, forming a nearly spherical shape. A white airflow was emitted from Sakura's fist, which slowly dissipated into the air, looking very powerful. Cannon fist was a short-range fighting technique. It was mainly used within a short distance. Even Nangongja could only rely on the inner strength in his body to make the attack of Cannon fist reach a distance of about 10 feet. After 10 feet, the attack would lose its power. However, Sakura used the monstrous strength technique she learned from Tsunade to increase the speed and strength of her punches to a level that even Nangongja could not reach. After in-depth research with Nangongzhe and Tsunade, she used the principle of Hyuga's Bagua, air palm, to create the move, air cannon. Although Sakura's fist stopped, the energy wrapped around her fist didn't dissipate. Instead, after leaving her fist, it became even faster and fiercer, bombarding 3 generations of wind shadow puppets. In just a moment, the black iron ribbon that was originally wrapped around 3 generations of wind shadow puppets has been broken, and 3 generations of wind shadow puppets also flew into the sky at a very fast speed. This sudden change made the chakra thread that was originally wrapped around 3 generations of wind shadow puppets to control the puppets in an instant, and Sasori also lost control of the puppets for a while. Sakura made a prompt decision and immediately began to apply monster strength to her legs. Under the blessing of monster strength, her jumping ability greatly increased. Sakura raised her fist and rushed towards 3 generations of wind shadow puppets like a cannonball. Crack! A crisp sound came from the sky, and soon spread throughout the battlefield. The 3 generations of wind shadow puppets were blown up by Sakura's punch. The broken shell and the unknown internal parts scattered around, and some iron sand stored inside the body of 3 generations of wind shadow puppets also floated out. Just when Sakura's mind was slightly relaxed, a shuriken suddenly rushed out of the iron sand. Chapter 385. Sasori, who was standing on the ground, looked at the 3 generations Kazekage puppet that had been smashed into pieces, and he felt distressed, although he still had a chance to repair it. But after such a crushing destruction, the performance of the 3 generations Kazekage puppet will be greatly affected. As for Sakura, Scorpion was too lazy to pay attention to it, because he had launched a sneak attack on Xiao Ying at such a close distance, and she could not borrow strength in the air. No matter what, it was impossible for Xiao Ying to escape this attack unscathed. Furthermore, this trump card of his was smeared with a highly toxic poison that he had researched and created. Even with the best treatment, the person would only be able to live for 3 days at most. After 3 days, the person would definitely die. However, what Sasori didn't know was that he also used this poison on Kankuro before. After Sakura arrived at Sunagakure, the first thing she did was to treat Kankuro. After the toxins were extracted, Sakura also took the opportunity to study them. Although she couldn't completely analyze the proportion of various drugs in these poisons, she had made some adjustments according to the general antidote made by Tsunade and made some time-effective antidotes. When she chose to attack the 3 generations Kazekage puppet in this way, Sakura didn't dare to say that she could avoid the large and small hidden weapons and iron sand attacks on the 3 generations Kazekage puppet. As a puppet master, Scorpion would definitely plant poison in all the places where it could be planted. Therefore, Xiao Ying also secretly injected the antidote she held in her hand into her own body. Sakura, who was in the air, couldn't avoid being hit by the shuriken hidden inside the 3 generations Kazekage puppet. Although it didn't hit the vital part, there was still a shallow scratch on Sakura's left arm. The scratch wasn't very deep, and even blood didn't flow out. But at this moment, Sasori's face had a victorious smile. But everything didn't go as smoothly as Sasori imagined. Now it was time for the antidote to work. The small tube of antidote that had been developed in an emergency could only last for 3 minutes. Within 3 minutes, even if she was attacked by Sasori's poison, she could easily deal with it, but after 3 minutes it would be a dead end. Sakura slowly moved her body to the side of Chio Popo, and quietly took out a small tube of reagent from the ninja bag behind her and stuffed it into Chio Popo's hand without a trace. With one hand behind her back, she explained the effect and duration of the antidote to Chio Popo with sign language. "You're not affected by my poison?" Seeing that Sakura had clearly been hit by his own poison shuriken, but she still seemed to be completely unaffected as she approached Chio Popo. Without waiting for Sakura to explain the reason, Sasori guessed the reason. "Is it the kid who wanted to track me near the village? Did you get my poison from him and concoct the antidote?" Sakura nodded, seemingly agreeing with Sasori's statement. Since ancient times, detoxification has been much more difficult than making poison, because making poison can be tried again and again endlessly, but detoxification is often only one chance. Has the little girl in front of me surpassed me in pharmacology? Sasori couldn't help but ask himself. This is really... Looking at Sakura and also looking at Chio, Sasori's stiff face actually showed a smile. I, the dignified Sasori of the Crimson Sand, was actually forced to this point by an old woman and a little girl? It seems that I shouldn't have hidden my strength from the beginning. Let me show you my true strength. With that, Sasori took off the black silk and red cloud robe he was wearing, and stood in front of Xiaoying and Chio with his upper body naked. Although Sakura and Chio also knew that Sasori had transformed himself into a puppet, when Sakura and Chio really saw the upper body of Sasori at this moment, they understood how terrible Sasori had done to himself. Sasori's upper body was pieced together by pieces of flesh that obviously didn't belong to human flesh, like building blocks to build the posture of Sasori's upper body. Sasori's abdomen had been completely hollowed out. Looking at the ropes wrapped in many circles inside, it was obvious that Sasori had transformed his abdomen into something similar to a twisted rope. Near Sasori's shoulder blades, there were also 2 long iron rods that seemed to be made of steel, and the other end of the iron rods was a sharp blade. On the scorpion's spine, there were many protrusions with holes, and the scrolls were placed in these holes. Sasori, looking at her own grandson, had become like this. Even Chio, who had experienced the vicissitudes of life, found it difficult to accept for a while. Her own grandson ruined his own body like this. Chio's heart couldn't help but begin to burn with anger. Sasori's intact left hand was placed near the right elbow that he had just dislocated. With a light flick of his finger, the arm that he had just dislocated to the ground had already returned to the elbow under the control of Chio. From his bosom, he pulled out a seemingly very thick scroll. His right hand grabbed the scroll and fiercely pulled it. The entire scroll's interior was exposed to the air. After inputting his own chakra into the scroll was immediately activated. A cloud of smoke was constantly produced along with the opening of the scroll, and after the smoke dissipated, a strange-looking puppet appeared. There were a total of 10 such puppets. Each puppet was dressed in a white robe, standing in front of Chio with different postures. Chio opened her hands and stretched them in front of her body. A chakra line was produced from Chio's fingertips and connected to the puppets. White secret technique. Kinsong 10 people. Join. After everything was prepared, Chio Popo used her low and powerless voice to call out the names of the 10 puppets in front of her. Clap, 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 clap. When the Kinsong 10 people completely appeared, Sasori unexpectedly couldn't help but clap his hands, as if he was very excited, and said to Chio, "The move that had been sealed by you is actually used again? It's really worthy of celebration. Then I will also let you see my move." After saying that, Sasori opened a piece of breastplate on the right side of his chest. A chakra line extended out from the hole after the breastplate was opened. 2 of the scrolls on Scorpion's back had been opened at some point in time. In an instant, a large group of puppets in dark red robes stood behind Scorpion. A rough estimate was actually close to 100. This was Red Secret Technique 100 Machine Show. Chapter 386. On the other side of the battlefield, Naruto and Kakashi were confronting Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Kisame at the moment. Looking at Itachi Uchiha standing opposite, Kakashi also told Naruto how to face Sharingan in a timely manner. Naruto also listened very carefully to the teacher's explanation. He stared closely at Itachi Uchiha's body, trying to judge Itachi's actions by observing his body's movements. But this trick has been used by Guy before. Itachi naturally won't fall in the same place twice. Itachi slowly raised his hand on the side of his body, slowly clenched his fist, and then extended his index finger toward Naruto. Suddenly, Naruto felt his consciousness was in a trance. There was even a feeling of weightlessness, and he couldn't even stand firmly. The originally bright surroundings had suddenly turned into a slightly dim yellow color. Naruto knew that he had been pulled into Genjutsu by Itachi Uchiha for a while. Naruto tried to turn his body to observe the situation around him, but he couldn't move. Naruto even felt that half of his body didn't seem to be his own at this moment. Suddenly, a hand grabbed Naruto's neck. Naruto struggled to turn his eyes and looked in the direction of his arm, but found that it was his right arm. But at this moment, his right arm was covered with a layer of gray aura, just like the completely demonized Sasuke he saw in the Valley of the Final Fate. If Naruto could see his current appearance, he would be very frightened, because half of his body has become Sasuke, who has entered the second state of Curse Seal. Naruto, I didn't expect that after so long you are still so weak. What can a person like you do? A cold voice sounded in Naruto's ear. Naruto was so familiar with this voice, it was the voice of his close friend Sasuke. Yes, if it wasn't because he was too weak, how could he not stop Sasuke from leaving? Just when Naruto was still blaming himself, he felt a surge in his abdomen, and the coat that was tightly pulled up slowly opened at this moment. A pink-haired person came out of his abdomen and looked at him with resentment in his eyes. You promised me that you would come back with Sasuke. Your words were so solemn, and you kept saying that you would bring Sasuke back even if your hands and feet were broken. But, Naruto, did you really try your best? There is such a powerful existence in your body. As long as you are willing to pay a small price, you can become very powerful. But you didn't do this, you let Sasuke go. Yes, if I let the nine tails in my body release more chakra, instead of limiting the nine tails chakra to a safe range, would I be able to fulfill my promise? Naruto's left shoulder was also distorted at this moment, and slowly turned into Kakashi's appearance. Kakashi, who only had a head, stared at Naruto with his eyes. There was no longer the kind of intimacy and care in his eyes. Instead, he looked very indifferent and disgusted. Naruto, you really disappointed me. I disappointed Kakashi, sensei? Kakashi didn't say much, but Naruto had completely felt the alienation in Kakashi's tone. Just when there were other places on his body that were out of his control, Naruto's vision suddenly turned black. When he opened his eyes again, it was back to the original scene. Kakashi had already fought with Itachi Uchiha and Kisame alone. It was very fierce, but it seemed that Kakashi was still at a disadvantage. Did you wake up? A familiar voice broke into Naruto's ears. Naruto quickly looked at the source of the voice, but found that Nangongja was putting a hand on his body at the moment. Just now, you accidentally fell into Genjutsu. Originally, I didn't plan to directly participate in the battle, but seeing that Kakashi had no time to help you, I came out to help you. Naruto seemed to still be immersed in his experience in Genjutsu at the moment. He didn't even ask why Nangongja left the wood leaf and came here. Genjutsu is Genjutsu after all. It targets the flaws in a person's psychology. Don't let the experience in Genjutsu affect reality. Do you understand? Obviously, seeing Naruto's confusion and pain at the moment, Nangongja could only comfort him a little. Then he walked slowly in the direction of Kakashi, Itachi, and Kisame with his Heaven's Calamity Sword. The three people who were still fighting fiercely at the moment stopped at the same time and looked at Nangongja. Itachi, and this guy who looks strange, you and I know what situation you are in. Now you can't beat me, don't waste your strength. Just directly remove your ninjutsu. This time you have already got the Ichibi. It's better to stop now. Nangongja didn't know the principle of elephant turn jutsu, but he was extremely sensitive to the state of Itachi and Kisame at the moment. Nangongja didn't want to use his sword because of such a thing, so he also advised. Itachi was relatively calm, but Ghost Mermaid wasn't calm at all. Although Ghost Mermaid had never fought against Nangongja directly, as the head of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, Nangongja had a lot of detailed information about him. Ghost Merman surely knew how terrifying Nangongja was, but he still suppressed the fear in his heart, because he wanted to challenge the powerful one. In any case, he was currently in the state of the elephant rotation technique. If he died, so be it. It wouldn't affect him. Ha! Ghost Mermaid raised the shark muscle in his hand high, and the enormous blade was about to hit Nangongja's body. Nangongja's eyebrows were slightly knitted together. He seemed a little annoyed. He had already tried to persuade them, but there were still people provoking him. It really made him feel very uncomfortable. Without even looking at Ghost Mermaid, Nangongja gently waved the Heaven's Disaster Sword in his hand, which hadn't even been unsheathed. Ghost Mermaid's huge body was directly cut into two at this moment. A burst of smoke surged, and the tall and burly ghost mermaid changed his appearance at this moment. This idiot? Itachi glanced at the corpse on the ground that was split into two. Then he took a deep look at Nangongja. Then he also removed the ninjutsu on his body, and he also turned into a strange face and fell to the ground. Chapter 387. Facing the sudden appearance of Nangongja, although Kakashi didn't trust him unconditionally like Naruto, as a person close to his father, Kakashi didn't care much about the reason why Nangongja came here. After all, Nangongja was the one who helped him solve the deadlock. When he fought with Itachi Uchiha and Kisame just now, Kakashi was completely sure that these two people were not the real Itachi Uchiha and Kisame. But even if the number of chakra is insufficient, and their bodies are not so flexible, standing in front of him is indeed the existence of two Kage-level ninjas. What's more, Kakashi himself doesn't have much chakra. Just now, Kakashi almost used the power he has been sealing because of Rin's death. Such power, Kakashi really doesn't want to use it so casually. Okay, let's not stand here and stare at each other. With that, Nangongja pointed to Gaara's body that was put on the ground by Deidara in order to attract the attention of Kakashi and Naruto before the battle and said, "Let's take Gaara and join the people of Sunagakure. The Kage of our ninja village naturally has to return to our ninja village." Both Kakashi and Naruto nodded. After looking at each other, Kakashi slowly stepped back, obviously letting Naruto take Gaara's body. With a heavy heart, Naruto walked step by step to Gaara's side. Kneeling on one knee, Naruto carefully checked the large and small injuries on Gaara's body. "I believe you, you have done your best for your village." For some reason, Naruto suddenly began to see scenes in front of him. As the same column force, Naruto and Gaara have the same starting point in life. Both of them were lonely and ostracized by others. At this moment, Naruto suddenly saw the scene of himself lying on the swing at the gate of the ninja school and watching other people's parents come to pick up their children. Those adults' and children's disgust and fear were like knives cutting off pieces of flesh from Naruto's heart. And Gaara was no different from Naruto. Everyone who saw Gaara would retreat in the sciences. Some children even threw stones and debris at Gaara in order to show that they were not afraid of Gaara. At that time, Gaara's ability to control sand was not fully awakened. Although the sand blocked most of the attacks, some attacks still hit Gaara directly. At this moment, Gaara and Naruto were very similar. The two of them could only shed tears in the dead of night when no one was paying attention to them. But slowly, the two of them became different. Gaara and Naruto, who had been crying, changed their faces at this moment. Naruto had a stubborn smile on his face. Even with tears in his eyes, he was still so determined. He seemed to believe that everything would change because of his efforts. Slowly, Sakura and Sasuke's figures rushed to Naruto's side. Although the three children didn't appear to be very close, no matter how you looked at it, you could feel that they cared for each other. With Sakura and Sasuke, Nangongja, Irika, and Kakashi also walked to Naruto's side. Slowly, more and more people gathered around Naruto. Naruto was smiling brightly at this moment, smiling so happily. Gaara's face became colder and colder. Even his original face was covered by his sand armor. The big love character on his forehead looked so conspicuous. The scarlet color seemed to tell everyone that he was Shura who only loved himself. Maintaining such coldness and madness, Gaara grew up little by little, but drops of blood dripped from his hands from time to time. However, Gaara's eyes seemed to be full of sadness. "We're the same, but I'm luckier than you. I met many people who cared about me and didn't leave me. I believe you actually met them, but you haven't had time to open your heart yet. Over the years, while I was traveling in the ninja world, you became the Kazekage of Sunagakure. Presumably, there are also more and more people standing by your side, encouraging you to move forward. Now, let me take you home." With one hand holding Gaara's shoulder and the other holding Gaara's leg, Naruto picked Gaara up. The sand armor that had been covering Gaara's body also withered at this moment. Gaara doesn't need such a thing to protect his body and mind anymore. Does he? Behind Naruto, Nangongja and Kakashi's eyes were also full of sympathy and sadness. There are still too many fools in this world. Isn't it these short-sighted people who twisted a kind heart into a demon? Kakashi and Nangongja were very fortunate to be able to enter Naruto's world when Naruto needed it the most. It's great to let Naruto still be the optimistic and naive child. Around Sasori and Chio, there were puppet parts all over the place. Sasori's red secret jutsu 100 machine manipulation was very powerful. Sasori once conquered a small country with this ninjutsu, which shows how terrifying it is. However, Chio Popo's white secret technique near Pine 10 men was also known as a powerful puppet that could fight against 10 men. There were also various kinds of combination skills between the puppets. She was evenly matched with scorpions close to 100 puppets. However, Chio was old after all. Although the power of the Kinmatsu 10 men was powerful, Chio was still a little lacking in stamina in a protracted battle. However, Sakura, who inherited Tsunade's monstrous strength and Nangongja's martial arts routine, was on Chio's side. Sakura and Chio cooperated perfectly when the opportunity presented itself. A Kinmatsu 10-men puppet suddenly spat out a mechanical ball from its mouth. Sakura quickly grabbed the mechanical ball, passed through the layers of obstacles of the 100 machine manipulation puppets, and forcefully threw the mechanical ball in her hand towards Sasori. The mechanical ball immediately underwent various changes, like a strange beast head that opened its mouth to devour people. When Sasori was hit by the beast head, the huge impact also directly affected Sasori's body, and he was directly nailed to the cliff next to him by the beast head. The hundreds of puppets, which had been charging forward aggressively, now fell to the ground as if they had lost control of themselves. Chapter 388. The beast head transformed by this mechanical ball seems to have the effect of isolating chakra. The chakra threads that originally appeared from Scorpion's body have all disappeared at this moment. Of course, those puppets that were controlled by Scorpion lost control at this moment and naturally collapsed to the ground. Grandma Chio, where is the antidote I just gave you? Hurry up and use it. I just saw that you were scratched by Scorpion's puppet. You must not be careless. There was still a little distance between Chio and Sakura, but Sakura has already begun to remind Chio loudly. At this moment, Chio also felt that her body began to be a little numb. Her hands trembled as she reached into the ninja bag on her body, apparently preparing to take out the antidote that Sakura just gave to her. But Sakura's originally concerned eyes became a little panicked at this moment, because at this moment, a puppet behind Chio stood up tremblingly, looking back at Scorpion, who was sealed in the beast head. But at this moment, the energy ball with the word Scorpion written on Scorpion's chest has disappeared, and the eyes that originally looked somewhat human at this moment have completely turned into a lifeless white. Chio only felt that the side of her face suddenly felt warm. That kind of feeling was like the touch of blood. At this moment, Xiaoying was already standing behind Chio Popo, using her own body to block the blade of the puppet that stood up trembling just now. The injury caused by this blade was very deep, directly penetrating Sakura's abdomen. Although Sakura avoided the vital parts in time, her body was still involuntarily affected by the poison. The time of the antidote has passed. Sakura? Looking at Sakura, who blocked the blade for her, Chio was also full of surprise. However, the stinging pain from the poison directly invaded Chio Popo's brain. Chio Popo's originally weak body was no longer able to stand up. Quick! Use the antidote. Sakura also noticed that Chio's mother-in-law's condition was not good, so she immediately said to Chio intermittently. The price she had to pay for speaking like that was the wound on her abdomen. She vomited blood from her mouth. At this moment, the sword in the hand of the puppet that Scorpion possessed was naturally laced with Scorpion's special poison. The poison constantly played its role, and the feeling of numbness soon began to spread throughout Sakura's body. However, Sakura suddenly felt a cooling sensation in her legs, and the numbness slowly faded away. And the reason for these changes was naturally because Chio, who was already paralyzed on the ground, had used her own antidote on Sakura. Looking at Chio, who sacrificed her chance to detoxify the poison in order to save Sakura, a ninja from Woodleaf, Sasori's eyes were also in a trance. If his grandmother had been so humane and not so tyrannical, would his parents still have a chance to live? Would he be able to live his own life like a normal person? Not knowing why, Scorpion suddenly had a little doubt about his choice. But after all, Sasori had adhered to his own ideas for so many years. Such complicated thoughts were not unheard of. Naturally, Sasori quickly drove such doubts out of his mind. He tried hard to pull out his sword from Sakura's abdomen, but Sakura held the sword tightly, not letting Sasori succeed. Such a scene of Chiyo loving Sakura, and Sakura risking her life to protect Chiyo, was so dazzling in Sasori's eyes at this moment. Why can't I be like Sakura and get the care of my grandmother? Why have I always been scolded and indifferent? With the birth of this thought in his heart, Sasori's eyes became more and more crazy. His right upper arm suddenly rotated, as if opening a mechanism. His upper arm and lower arm suddenly separated, and a sharp blade appeared in front of his upper arm. At this moment, Sakura also didn't react because of the sudden change. She just watched Sasori attack Chiyo. But Chiyo's fingertips twitched, and two figures suddenly appeared in front of Sasori. The familiar face made Sasori, whose emotions were fluctuating violently, stagnate for a moment. And it was this moment of stagnation that allowed the long swords in the hands of the two puppets, father and mother, to penetrate the core of Sasori's consciousness and power. In the end, the most important thing in your heart is still your parents. Sasori? Looking at Sasori, who was penetrated by the sharp blade, Chiyo's voice trembled slightly. After all, she killed her grandson with her own hands. Just when Chiyo wanted to say something, Sakura's body slowly fell to the ground. This girl, in order to stop me, has been keeping the long sword with poison inside her body. Her antidote may be effective, but in the face of the continuous erosion of the poison, even the antidote has a time when it will fail. Seems she is also going to die? Hearing Sasori's words, Chiyo immediately tried her best to move her body to Sakura's side. With the medical chakra attached to her hands, she slowly treated Sakura's wounds, and from time to time she also encouraged Sakura. Grandma, when did you become so confused? When I knew that this girl was a medical ninja, although the place I attacked was not a vital part, it was still a very troublesome place. Grandma, how can you save this child with your half-baked medical ninjutsu? Listening to Sasori's words, Chiyo's eyes flashed with a trace of sadness. This is not a medical ninjutsu. With that, the light of the medical chakra in her hands slowly turned into the light of Saiyan chakra. I am pouring my vitality into Sakura's body to stimulate Sakura's self-healing ability. No matter how serious the injury is, it is not worth mentioning under the full operation of the human body repair system. Sharing vitality. Hearing Chiyo's words, the face of his father and mother involuntarily appeared in front of Sasori's eyes. Grandma, you really do a lot of boring things. Chiyo's face also showed a touch of indescribable color, nodded as if to comfort herself and said, when people are old, they are always obsessed with some things and do a lot of things that sound silly. Chapter 389. Looking at the grandmother in front of him who looked familiar yet strange, Sasori felt that after he left Sunagakure for more than 10 years, his grandmother had seen and thought a lot of things clearly. The original iron-blooded and surly Chiyo had really become the most ordinary granny next door at this moment. Human life? For some reason, looking at Chiyo, who was trying her best to save Sakura, Sasori's mouth began to mutter to himself, how small are humans, the erosion of time and the passage of time will take away human life. We may sigh and lament that mayflies only have a single day, but don't humans also only have a single day that they think is long? So, I tried my best to find a way to let us live forever. I succeeded. As long as my core is not destroyed, I can continue to make puppets to continue my life. What's wrong with this approach? Sasori's words seemed to be asking his grandmother, but also seemed to be asking himself. People often say, when a person is about to die, his words are kind. When a bird is about to die, its cry is sad. Perhaps at this moment, Sasori fell into such a state? The original paranoid and stubborn thoughts have slowly dissipated at this moment, leaving only a rational thought to look at his life. In fact, our life is destined to be a tragedy. Looking at her grandson, who seemed to be a little confused, Chiyo transmitted her vitality to Sakura to restore Sakura, and said to her grandson with a little doting tone, "We live in an era that is destined to face more joys and sorrows. In this era, we are as small as the mayflies in your words. We rise and fall with the waves of the times, and these waves are the blood of every ninja, and the tears in the eyes of every civilian. Turned out that I didn't understand, or I didn't put my eyes on these things. But since you left Sunagakure, I also took the initiative to remove my authority and lived in seclusion outside Sunagakure with my younger brother, your second grandpa, Ebizo. It was also this kind of life that gave me the opportunity to carefully consider my life. The life of fishing, playing chess, and even pretending to be dead every day was actually more satisfying than the life that I had lived for decades before. It was this kind of life that made me understand that everyone is equal, and everyone's life is worth respecting." As she spoke, Chiyo raised her head and looked at the scattered puppets belonging to Scorpion. These puppets were all human puppets, made from human bodies. Back then, when I discovered that you were creating human puppets, I wasn't that against it. This was because human puppets did have their own advantages, which ordinary puppets couldn't compare to. But as the chief advisor of Sunagakure, I can't tolerate and hide such things. That's why I lost my temper at you at that time, thinking that you don't have a long-term vision. But, Scorpion, my grandson, you are also someone who has suffered the torture of the death of your family. Don't these human puppets have their own families? Perhaps they have their own children. Putting yourself in the shoes of others, do you really think that you have no regrets for what you have done? Facing his grandmother's gaze, Scorpion couldn't help but be silent. The death of his parents was the eternal regret of his life, and it was the most primitive motivation for all of Scorpion's actions. But when Scorpion took the lives of others at will for his own actions, did Scorpion also indirectly create more of himself? Scorpion never thought about this problem before, because Scorpion had been completely covered by the curtain of his inner darkness, and he couldn't see anything else. But now, when he could seriously listen to his grandmother's words and began to reflect on himself, Scorpion suddenly found that he didn't know how to justify his behavior. Was he really wrong? Chiyo-Popo and Sasori once again fell into silence. After a while, Chiyo-Popo retracted the Saiyan chakra covering her hand. Xiaoying, whose eyes were originally tightly shut, slowly opened her eyes at this moment. The first thing she saw was Scorpion's extremely expressionless face. Without any explanation, Scorpion jumped up from the ground. Sakura directly punched Scorpion's face. A large amount of chakra consumption made Sakura's fist no longer attached with monstrous strength, but her strong physical fitness still broke a large piece of the puppet's face, which was possessed by Scorpion at this moment. "You bastard! What do you think of your grandmother and other people's lives?" After throwing such a punch, Sakura looked at Scorpion and said angrily. In Sakura's own cognition, Scorpion was simply a heinous devil. For his own selfish desires, many people lost their lives, and even caused his grandmother to be poisoned. Human lives. Chiyo was very weak at the moment. She wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, she closed her mouth, as if she wanted to save her strength to do something. Looking at the core of his chest, which was still bleeding, Scorpion said with a little self-mockery, "Right now, even I don't understand myself. Perhaps I'm just a failed product that tried my best to turn myself into a puppet but still retained some human characteristics. Let me give you, the child that my grandmother likes very much, a final gift." Looking at Sakura, Scorpion said slowly, "I know that you are very concerned about Orochimaru, and to a certain extent, I am also a person who stands on the opposite side of Orochimaru. So, remember to go to Kusanagi village after 10 days. I left a spy in Orochimaru's place, and he has already made an appointment to meet me there." Hearing Scorpion's words, Sakura's expression changed obviously, and the anxious emotion instantly rushed to Sakura's heart. "Sakura, who just wanted to ask about the spy, saw that Scorpion's eyes had slowly lost focus and became dull at this moment. But Sakura quickly adjusted her mentality. After all, there is still a poisoned Chiyo around her. The most urgent thing at the moment is to save Chiyo's life. Isn't it? Grandma, I will take you back to the village with the fastest speed. I will do my best to make an antidote to save your life. Chapter 390. No, we don't need to go back to the village. Chiyo shook her head and refused Sakura's proposal to take her back to the Sunagakure for treatment. We have more important things to do. You support me and we will immediately meet with Kakashi and Naruto. Get Gaara's body as soon as possible. There's no time to lose. Although she did not understand why Chiyo Popo wanted to waste her precious treatment time, looking at Chiyo Popo's serious face and the desperate look in her eyes, Xiaoying could not say anything to refuse. Okay, let's go find Naruto together. Following the direction of Naruto and Kakashi's departure, and Kakashi's habit of leaving marks in the direction they passed, Sakura quickly found the location of Kakashi and Naruto. Nangong's figure also came into Sakura's eyes. Just as she was about to say hello, Chiyo spoke first. It's been a long time. The kid named Yama, who has been following behind White Fang. Chiyo naturally knew Nangongja, the boy who was feared by the Sunagakure. The moment Nangongja saw Chiyo Popo, he was keenly aware that Chiyo Popo's life force was constantly flowing away in an unnatural manner. It's indeed been a long time, Chiyo. It seems you've made up your mind? Kakashi, Naruto, and Sakura were all confused at this moment. But Chiyo instinctively felt that Nangongja had discovered the situation of her own reincarnation technique. Nodding her head, Chiyo turned her gaze to Gaara's body, who was held by Naruto. The Sunagakure, the land of wind, can't lose Gaara, can't lose the fifth Kazekage. I've already made up my mind. Hearing Chiyo's words, Nangongja nodded and said to Naruto, Naruto, put Gaara's body on the ground, and Chiyo may wake him up. Wake him up? But Gaara is already. Although he has accepted the fact that Gaara is dead, Nangongja, a person he trusted very much, suddenly said that Gaara can be saved, and Naruto was suddenly overwhelmed with joy. Naruto didn't know how much it would cost to reverse life and death. However, Kakashi and Sakura already had some faint guesses. Looking at Chiyo Popo's resolute appearance at the moment, no matter how they looked at it, it seemed like she was ready to die. Chiyo stretched out her thin arm and stopped Sakura from supporting her. Chiyo walked to Gaara's side with her own stumbling steps and slowly squatted down. The familiar Saiyan chakra light had now covered Chiyo's hand, and nearly 70% of the vitality that Nangongja had just sensed was gathered in Chiyo's palm. There are also differences between human column force and human column force. The seal on Gaara's body is to seal Shikaku in his own body. Only when he enters the Do's Jutsu mode can he exert the seal of Ichibi chakra. So although Gaara and Shikaku are still in a life and death relationship, they are not as close as I thought. In fact, there is still vitality hidden in Gaara's body. As long as the right method is used, the power in Gaara's body can be awakened. Originally, I created self-reincarnation to give life to the puppet, but now it can only awaken the vitality of one person. This ninjutsu that originally made me hopeful and then tormented by conservative disappointment has now come in handy. It's me, who single-handedly contributed to Gaara's tragic life. Then let me give Gaara a second life. Chiyo wrapped the chakra in her body with her vitality and constantly transmitted it to Gaara's body. Looking at Chiyo's obviously tired look and the flickering chakra on her hand, Naruto slowly put his hand on Chiyo's hand and used his chakra to stabilize the chakra channel on Chiyo's hand. I'm very happy that a child like you can appear in the world created by us old fogies. Looking at Naruto's anxious face at this moment and seemed to be very worried about Gaara, Chiyo couldn't help but say, we old fogies, either actively or passively, made the world worse and worse. Slowly, it seems that the only thing left in this world is cruel killing and cold calculation. But your appearance makes me believe that the ninja world can still change for the better. I have done good things and bad things in my life, and I don't know what kind of person I am. But I have to say that I'm not as good as you children. You are better than us, and you are more likely to make the ninja world different. Whether it's with Leaf or Sand Ninja, or even other places, they will change because of you young children. Although I'm old, I'm getting better and better at reading people. I believe in you, you will definitely make the world change. After saying that, Chiyo raised her head and looked at Naruto and said to Naruto, "You may be the person who knows Gaara the best and is most likely to enter Gaara's heart. I hope you can help Gaara if you can, because perhaps only you can understand Gaara's pain, and Gaara also understands your pain." No matter how slow Naruto is, he has already heard the meaning of Chiyo's words. "Grandma, you..." Just as he was about to say something, a smile appeared on Chiyo's face. "Well, you and Sakura are exactly the same. You can't save this old woman, so don't be so sad. I have long wanted to reunite with my son, daughter-in-law, and my grandson. They may have been waiting for me in the Pure Land for a long time." Silence. Perhaps only silence can express the sadness in everyone's heart at this moment. With the passage of time, the life aura on Chiyo's body has become thinner and thinner, and Gaara's body has been rejuvenated. Although he hasn't opened his eyes yet, everyone knows that Gaara has gone to the underworld, but he was pulled back by force. Chapter 391. As time passed, the residual body temperature on Chiyo's body began to slowly decrease, and the heartbeat from Gaara's body became more and more deafening. Temari and Kankuro brought a group of Sunigakure ninjas who were close to Gaara, and the 4 members of Kai Squad also came here to meet with Kakashi Squad. Facing Chiyo, who was willing to give up her life to save Gaara's life, everyone couldn't help but feel sad. It was precisely because of this mood that everyone fell into a silent atmosphere. Temari looked at her brother, who was unconscious on the ground and couldn't speak for a while. She could only stare at Gaara's face silently. Just as Temari looked at her brother's face intently, she suddenly found that Gaara's eyelashes trembled slightly. Seems like Gaara is about to wake up? Gaara's eyes kept trembling slightly, as if he was trying his best to open his eyes. Finally, the closed eyes opened. The eyes that had always hidden a kind of madness in everyone's impression were exceptionally clear at this moment. "You've finally woken up. Big sister was really worried sick about you." Seeing her little brother open his eyes, Tempura also displayed the attitude she should have as an elder sister. Although Kankuro, who was standing on the side, didn't speak, the deep strangeness in his eyes was so obvious. Since meeting Naruto, Gaara also slowly began to try to accept his sister and brother and let them slowly get close to his heart. But after this near-death experience, Gaara suddenly felt that the gap between him and his sister and brother had become less. Looking around, there were some familiar faces. There were his own direct Umbu, some of his own think tanks in dealing with government affairs, and even Kakashi and Nangongja, who stood a little bit away. But the most eye-catching was Naruto, who was half kneeling on the ground with Chiyo in his arms. "Naruto?" Hearing Gaara's call, Naruto also turned his eyes to Gaara, and the strong sadness in his eyes was so obvious. Sadness? Why would he be sad? He had been rescued by them from the Akatsuki, even though the Ichibi in his body no longer exists. The Ichibi no longer exists? Gaara suddenly realized the seriousness of the matter. As a Jinchuriki, his life was dependent on the tailed beast in his body. His tailed beast was taken away, but he didn't die. Instead, he was alive and well. This was the most important problem. What means can reverse life and death, and what price will it take to reverse life and death? Gaara was very smart. Naturally, he understood what happened from Naruto's attitude and the state of Ebizo standing silently beside Naruto. Did Grandma Chiyo save him? In Gaara's impression, Chiyo was not so amiable. She was even a little overbearing. But such a senior in Sunigakure was willing to give up her life to save a young Kazekage? Involuntarily, Gaara felt a huge weight on his shoulders. No matter what, let's return to the village first before making a fuss. Looking at his brother and sister standing beside him, Gaara's superior aura as a Kazekage immediately emerged from his body. Although he still looked weak when he spoke, Gaara, who stood up tremblingly, was like a stabilizing needle at the moment, calming everyone's heart. With the help of Temari, Gaara slowly walked to Kakashi and Nangongja. Many thanks to the two strong men from Konoha who are willing to take the risk to rescue me. Sunagakure is grateful. As a Kazekage, being able to say grateful to Nangongja and Kakashi, who belong to other shinobi villages, is already very surprising. Nangongja and Kakashi can be regarded as old foxes after all. Nangongja responded to Gaara's politeness. Kazekage-sama is too polite. Our Woodleaf village is an ally of Sunagakure. It's normal for us to support each other. It's just like a pair of brothers helping each other. So there's no need to say grateful. Although Nangongja doesn't regard Woodleaf village as his spiritual sustenance, he still belongs to Woodleaf in name after all, and the loyal followers of Woodleaf, Naruto, Sakura, and Kakashi are standing beside him. Nangongja naturally can't avoid such a scene. You guys have worked hard to rescue me. Why don't you go to Sunagakure with us to have a good rest? Gaara's eyes have been staring at Naruto, seemingly hoping that Naruto can speak for him, but Naruto seems to be thinking about other things at the moment and didn't notice Gaara's eyes at all. Looking at Gaara's eager eyes, Kakashi took a few steps forward and said to Gaara, "Don't worry. Thank you for your concern, Kazekage-sama, but we still need to return to Woodleaf village to report. Although we also want to go to Sunagakure to communicate with you, we can't." Kakashi's words were obviously an excuse, but after all, Gaara couldn't ignore the Kazekage's reservedness and shamelessly asked Naruto and the others to stay in Sunagakure. So, he said to Kakashi with a regretful look, "Kakashi, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Hatake Jonin is right. I was too abrupt. Since you need to return to the village to report the mission, then I won't force you to stay. I also hope that you can bring my most sincere gratitude and sincere friendship to Woodleaf's fourth Hokage. Sunagakure and Woodleaf village will be the closest allies." With that, Gaara even slightly bowed to Kakashi and Nangongja. "We don't dare. We will naturally convey your goodwill to Hokage-sama." Gaara nodded and gave a look to the ninjas of his ninja village. The sand ninjas also understood and disappeared in a few flashes. Chapter 392. Seeing that the Sunagakure people had left, Sakura slowly told Sasori about the so-called gift of Sasori, the precious information about Orochimaru's whereabouts. In fact, Nangongja and Kakashi could have promised Gaara to go to Sunagakure, but Sakura's secret gesture made Kakashi come forward and say words of refusal to Gaara. "So what are you going to do?" Looking at Sakura, Naruto, and Kakashi, Sasuke-sensei, Nangongja couldn't help but ask. "I don't know, my mind is in a mess now." Sakura raised her head and looked at Nangongja with an indecisive look. Although Kakashi didn't speak, the struggle in his eyes was very obvious. Orochimaru is not an ordinary ninja. His ruthlessness and viciousness are obvious to all. Although Kakashi also hopes that Sasuke will not go on any evil path, if the price of doing so is to push his two subordinates into a more dangerous situation, Kakashi is unwilling to do so. Looking at Sakura and Kakashi, who obviously couldn't make up their minds, Naruto's face showed a determined look. "We are going to find Sasuke. I said before that I will bring Sasuke back. Even if I break his hands and feet, I will bring Sasuke back." It was still very similar to 3 years ago. When it came out of Naruto's mouth again, the determination and seriousness in it not only did not fade but became stronger. "Naruto, don't be impulsive. Sasori himself is a member of Akatsuki. We can't believe the information he gave us so straightforwardly. You are Nine Tails' column force. You are their target. Have you ever thought about what if this is a trap?" Taking a step back, even if what Sasori said is true, we can indeed learn Sasuke's location through such a spy. But do you think Sasuke will listen to you so easily and go back to Woodleaf with you? Looking at Naruto, Kakashi tried his best to analyze the situation and possible dangers for Naruto. After all, Naruto's identity is too sensitive. Not only is he Nine Tails' column force the child of Woodleaf Yondaime, but Naruto's strength is only barely enough to reach the lowest limit of Jonin. With this kind of strength, he did not have the capital to act recklessly. At the beginning, Sasuke left Wood Leaf with his own consciousness. This is well known to both you and me. Do you think that even if you ran in front of Sasuke so straightforwardly, even if you tried your best to persuade him, you can reverse Sasuke's mind? Naruto, you are not a person who can manipulate the will of others. Are you sure you can do it? Kakashi's rather heavy tone made Naruto silent for a while. Although he has always believed that Sasuke was bewitched by Orochimaru to leave Wood Leaf, in fact, he still knows in his heart that if Sasuke didn't have such thoughts, even if he was bewitched, it would be meaningless. Kakashi-sensei, I know that in your opinion, my current behavior and thoughts are very naive and meaningless, but Sasuke is my teammate and my best friend. I can't easily give up such a person. If I give up the opportunity to get my best friend back, I will regret it for the rest of my life. This is a knot in my heart. This time, let me willfully go to see Sasuke. This is my last effort. If I don't succeed this time, I am willing to give up my obsession with Sasuke. Obviously, Naruto also made an extremely difficult decision. But Naruto had to do this, because Kakashi and Nangongja were here. Even if he wanted to go to Sasuke, he would be stopped directly. So he might as well add some conditions to make Kakashi and Nangongja agree to his request. Naruto's determination seemed to have slightly shaken Kakashi. Kakashi looked at Nangongja for help. It seemed that he wanted Nangongja to stop Naruto from doing such an impulsive act. But Nangongja obviously knew Naruto's character better. This stubborn temper of not turning back even if he hit a wall would not change. So Nangongja could only follow Naruto's words and said to Naruto, Naruto, remember your promise. This is your last chance to be willful. I hope you can seriously fulfill your words. Naruto nodded, as if he was making a promise to Nangongja. Nangongja also slowly put his arm around Kakashi's neck and whispered in Kakashi's ear, You and I both know Naruto's character. Even if we can stop him for a while, we can't stop him for a lifetime. This time, you follow the two of them to find Sasuke. You don't even have to think about it to know that they will not bring Sasuke back to the village. So our fundamental purpose is actually to stabilize Naruto, so that Naruto will no longer be so obsessed with Sasuke. After listening to Nangongja's words, Kakashi said to Nangongja with a little doubt, I'll follow? You mean you're not going? Nangongja nodded and said to Kakashi, I won't go with you to find Sasuke this time. Although I have a little bit of relationship with this child, I'm not so obsessed with him. This time I just happened to meet you at the right time. I have more important things to do. Just happened to meet? In fact, Kakashi didn't hear Nangongja's words in his heart. How can someone just happen to go all the way from Wood Leaf Village to Kawa country? But the so-called more important things, in Nangongja's words, are very likely. After all, for Kakashi, who is more familiar with Nangongja, Nangongja is shrouded in a mysterious veil. Well, then I can only try my best to let Naruto and Sakura safely return to the village. Hearing Kakashi's answer, Nangongja was a little relieved. Waving his hand slightly to Kakashi, Nangongja's figure appeared on the branch. In one direction, Nangongja began to use his light kung fu. This time, he came out because of the Akatsuki's movement. Seeing the three members of the Akatsuki with his own eyes, he also got some useful information. The almost childlike love and hatred between Naruto and Sasuke, in Nangongja's view, was not as important as the Akatsuki's movement. Therefore, Nangongja is now also trying his best to rush to the headquarters of Blood Cloak Pavilion, hoping to use the headquarters information and the help of personnel to predict and hinder the Akatsuki's movement as much as possible. Chapter 393. Head. In front of the gate of the Bloodcloth Pavilion's headquarters, two Bloodcloth Pavilion disciples dressed in greenwood altar uniforms bowed respectfully to Nangongja, who was standing at the gate. Although Nangongja had not spent much time in the Bloodcloth Pavilion's headquarters in the past few years, Nangongja's prestige had increased instead of decreasing. Nangongja and Bai Shui had rescued the Bloodcloth Pavilion from the brink of collapse. They had formulated a series of development policies, allowing the Bloodcloth Pavilion to slowly emerge from a hidden organization and become a huge force that every disciple of the Bloodcloth Pavilion could proudly declare their allegiance to. All of these actions were constantly spreading his influence. Just like the two disciples who were looking at Nangongzhi with longing, most of the disciples of the Bloodcloth Pavilion had a yearning and admiration for Nangongzhi, the altar master of the Five Elements altar, who was originally the center of power in the Bloodcloth Pavilion, had now retired to the second line. As the head, Nangongzhi had become the core of all the disciples of the Bloodcloth Pavilion. No need to be so polite. Go and inform the altar master of Bai Shui to come to my office. I have something important to discuss with her. Nangongzhi gently raised his hand in the air. The two disciples who were bowing to Nangongzhi were now supported by an invisible force. After witnessing Nangongzhi's powerful strength and seeing Nangongzhi's peaceful attitude toward disciples like them, the two disciples were grateful and nervous. Yes, we understand. The two disciples looked at each other. One of them turned around and entered the headquarters, running toward the office of the Bai Shui altar. Nangongzhi nodded to the other disciple and entered his office in the Bloodcloth Pavilion. When he opened the door of his office, nothing had changed. It looked spotless. Nangongzhi casually hung his coat on a hanger and casually paced around his room. Soon, there was a soft knock on the door of Nangongzhi's office. Nangongzhi also straightened his expression and sat on his seat. After clearing his throat and tidying up his clothes, Nangongzhi continued, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Please come in." The door was quickly opened. Bai Shui, who was wearing a green dress, stood outside the door. Although several years had passed, time did not seem to have left the slightest trace on Bai Shui's body. No, it could not be said that there was no trace. Bai Shui tied her hair into a bun on top of her head, revealing her fresh and beautiful face. That kind of gentle feeling became even more intense, and there was a kind of refreshing feeling that hit him in the face. "Head, the altar lord of Bai Shui altar is here to report." When Bai Shui saw Nangongzhi, she slowly bowed to Nangongzhi. Nangongzhi didn't show off his ability to support the two disciples at the door. Instead, he personally walked up and helped Bai Shui up. After closing the door of the office, Nangongzhi brought Bai Shui to the sofa in the office. "Head, you haven't come to the headquarters for a long time. Do you have any important matters that require our assistance?" Bai Shui's tone seemed to be a little reproachful as she spoke to Nangongzhi, who was just like her younger brother. "Big sister Bishui, you should understand that managing a huge force is not my goal. This headquarters has Sister Bai Shui, Old Man Aoki, Ho Tu, and Akame's assistants. This place is not mine, right?" Among the 5 altar lords of the 5 Elements altar, Bai Shui was undoubtedly the closest to Nangongzhi. Therefore, Nangongzhi did not mind revealing his thoughts in front of Bai Shui. "This time, I came to the headquarters of the Blood-Robed Pavilion because of the Akatsuki, the mortal enemy of our Blood-Robed Pavilion. When I was in the Wood Leaf Village, I received the news that Gaara was kidnapped by the Akatsuki. After that, I immediately went to the Sunagakure. I've watched more than half of this one-tail capture battle. Turns out that the Akatsuki itself has a very convenient way to seal the bijou. It took less than 4 days for Gaara to be taken away and for the tailed beast in his body to be stripped. This kind of mobility is extremely advantageous. Although there is no eternal enemy in the world, the Akatsuki has lost too many people in our hands. How can a person who cut a piece of flesh from your body be so easy to forget? Therefore, we still need to do everything possible to suppress the strength of the Akatsuki, so that they have no spare energy to be distracted. Originally, the Blood-Robed Pavilion pursued survival, and the Akatsuki pursued power. Originally, there was no conflict between these two forces. However, step by step, they were on opposite sides. Among them, the Akatsuki besieged the Blood-Robed Pavilion before, and even used the Altar Lord of the Blood-Robed Pavilion to help him. This was also one of the reasons Nangongzhi just said. But the power of the Blood-Robed Pavilion has slowly emerged at this moment and became a part of the ninja world. Although the purpose of the Akatsuki is unknown, it must be to disturb the current situation of the ninja world. Whether it is the old forces like the 5 great ninja villages or the Blood-Robed Pavilion, They are undoubtedly pursuing temporary peace in the ninja world. This is the real most important reason, and it is also the most important reason that cannot be told to outsiders. I already understand little brother Nangong's idea. You don't need to spend so much effort to persuade me. I am firmly on your side. You only need to consider how to fully mobilize the power of the Blood-Robed Pavilion to achieve your own goals. As long as it is something that Big Sister can do, Big Sister will naturally do her best to help you. Bai Shui looked at Nangongja, who had a serious expression on his face, and chuckled. That kind of love and support from the heart, Nangongja felt so clearly. Big Sister, I will go to find all the information for you. We will analyze the next step of the Akatsuki in a while, and do everything possible to make the Akatsuki's collection of bijou encounter more obstacles or even failure. Just finished speaking, Bisui twisted her slender body and walked toward the door of Nangongja's office. Involuntarily, the feeling of being trusted by others slowly filled Nangongja's heart at this moment. Bisui, Big Sister, since you trust me so much, I will naturally not push the Blood-Robed Pavilion into the fire pit. Chapter 394. Piles of information were continuously moved to Nangongja's office, and it didn't take long for Nangongja's office to be filled with information. Even if there was such a huge pile of information, it was merely the information collected by Bloodcloth Pavilion about Akatsuki, which was classified information that absolutely wasn't allowed to be wantonly looked at, or the important information that had been deliberately selected. There were many other information that wasn't so important, and at this moment, the disciples of Clearwater Altar were also working hard to slowly check and select them. From the information we know now, we can confirm that the goal of the Akatsuki organization is the 9-tailed beasts that were distributed to various ninja villages under the control of Senju Takuma, the god of shinobi. We don't know the reason and purpose of the Akatsuki organization's collection of tailed beasts, but we can confirm that the purpose of the Akatsuki organization is not a simple collection hobby, but to set off a revolution that will sweep the ninja world. Holding the information in his hand, Clearwater began to slowly summarize the records in it. Among them, the Sanbai Isabu was once expelled by the Akatsuki organization, but the plan failed because of the obstruction of the leader. Not long ago, the Ichibi Shikaku was captured by 2 official members of the Akatsuki organization, and they even pulled the Ichibi out of his body. In order to save the life of Gaara, the chief consultant of Sunagakure, Chio, sacrificed herself to save Gaara, and Woodleaf also sent people to help Sunagakure recapture the Kazekage. The relationship between Sunagakure and Woodleaf village became warmer. After this battle, the 2 official members of the Akatsuki organization who forcibly captured Gaara, Deidara, and Sasori, one of them lost his right arm, which is very important for him to cast jutsu, and the other even lost his life. According to the information we know, the official member of the Akatsuki organization is actually only 9 tails, and this action directly killed one and crippled the other. Their combat power directly decreased by nearly a quarter. Even if the Akatsuki organization is not a close organization, in order to achieve their purpose, they will definitely change their approach. When Clearwater said his judgment, Nangongja also slightly nodded to show his agreement. This time, losing members like Sasori and Deidara, no matter which organization it is, will feel heartache. Therefore, it was inevitable that Akatsuki would change their plan. Since this time they suffered a loss in the hands of a big ninja village, then the Akatsuki is likely to put their eyes on Column Force, who has no backing from a big ninja village. Among the 9-tailed beasts, we can confirm that the 3-tailed Isabu and the 6-tailed Rhino Dog are either wild or sealed in the body of the renegade ninja. Although their whereabouts are hidden and difficult to find, they are still the best targets. Nangongja made his judgment after reading the information about the 9-tailed beasts collected by the Bloodcloak Pavilion. In addition, the Nanabai Halcyon itself belongs to the Waterfall village of the Waterfall country. As the only ninja village outside of the 5 major countries that has a bijou, it is very likely to become the target of the Akatsuki organization. I think we should put our eyes more on such 3-tailed beasts. Nangongja and Clearwater were also very seriously analyzing the Akatsuki organization's idea of capturing the bijou at this moment. At the same time, in the Rain village of the Rain country, in a secret room, A man with a whirlpool mask was talking face-to-face with the leader of the Akatsuki organization, Pain. If someone could hear their previous conversation, they would be surprised to find that the action plan discussed between them was very similar to the plan speculated by Nangongja and Clearwater. In that case, let's come up with a plan as soon as possible. We can't let others have too much time to react to the matter of collecting the bijou. We can't be sure whether someone will find out the information about our ultimate goal from the clues. We don't have as much time as we think. Looking at the masked man standing in front of him, Pain said slowly. For this masked man with a strange whereabouts, Pain didn't trust him so much. However, at this moment, the purpose between the two is the same, so there is the premise and possibility of cooperation. The masked man, who only revealed his right eye, at this moment, the 3 Tomo Sharingan in his eyes slowly turned. That kind of cunning and ruthless look was so obvious. Even Pain, who has a cooperative relationship with him, secretly raised his vigilance at this moment. I understand. I will come up with a plan as soon as possible. As for the dead Sasori, his position of Jade Girl will be inherited by me temporarily. It's also time for me to make some visible contributions to our organization. Isn't it? After that, the masked man's mouth softly made a sinister smile. You can tell other members my name is Hoodlum. When this sentence was finished, the masked man, the so-called Hoodlum, began to slowly distort, and the real figure slowly disappeared in the space vortex at this moment. The secret room finally returned to silence, and Pain stood in the same place, staring at the wall in front of him. Just now, when Hoodlum said, "our organization," Pain's heart was filled with a kind of unforgettable disgust. The Akatsuki was established by him, Conan, and Yahiko. It was his lifelong dream and spiritual sustenance. How could it be tarnished by a schemer like Hoodlum? However, did Pain really think about whether he had tarnished his dream and spiritual sustenance? It's easy to resent others, but it's even easier to forgive your own mistakes. But there is no doubt that at this moment, Pain didn't realize how far his behavior had deviated from the original goal of the Akatsuki to pursue peace. Perhaps, this was Nagato's way of escaping from the pain in his heart after Yahiko's death. Even with the most powerful eyes in the world, the Rinnegan Nagato never became a sage. Instead, he was more bound by the world of mortals. The resentment in his heart made Nagato's originally gentle and sensitive heart become more and more twisted. The Akatsuki will still stir up the world of shinobi, but that kind of satisfaction and happiness from the heart, perhaps it will be difficult for Nagato to feel again in this life. Just wait. I will collect the 9-tailed beasts and become the strongest existence in the world. This world will, under my guidance, truly move towards peace. Chapter 395. While Nangongja and Bisui were sorting out the collected information about the Blood Cloak Pavilion, Naruto's group also received a letter that disrupted their plan to go to the Land of Grass. The letter was signed by the Hokage's office in Woodleaf Village of the Land of Fire, and was personally signed by the 4th Hokage, Watergate. The first rule of a ninja is to complete the task, and this letter from the Hokage is the most important task for the ninja of Woodleaf Village. No matter how unwilling Naruto was, Kakashi still forced Naruto to return to Woodleaf Village. After separating from Sakura and Naruto, Kakashi came to the door of the Hokage's office. The letter from Watergate, Sensei didn't make it clear why they were summoned back, so Kakashi, who was standing at the door of the Hokage's office at the moment, didn't know what was going on, but as his sensei, Watergate wouldn't embarrass him. So Kakashi adjusted his breathing a little and knocked on the door of Watergate's office. "Come in." Watergate's voice sounded from inside the door, and it sounded a little low. Obviously he wasn't in a very good mood. Don't look at Kakashi's usual lazy appearance, but as a veteran jonin of Woodleaf Village, he still has the basic ability to observe people's body language. Kakashi braced himself and opened the door of the Hokage's office. The room was a little dark, and the large windows in the Hokage's office were covered by curtains, leaving only a little bit of light stolen from the gaps to bring some light in the office. Watergate was sitting on the sofa in the office at the moment, and opposite Watergate sat a white-haired man with glasses and a white-haired woman with a bun on her head. Kakashi knew these two people. They were the two consultants of the elders of Kiba, Mito Menitis and Zhuan Shaochun. At the four corners of the office there were several umbu who belonged to Watergate. Even if they were invited by Watergate Kakashi, who used to be an umbu, they still swept Kakashi with sharp eyes. Kakashi knew that this was their duty, but he still felt some repulsion in his heart. "Hello, sensei." "Hello, two consultants." Resisting the discomfort in his heart, Kakashi greeted Watergate, Zhuan Shaochun, and Mito Menitis. "Sensei gave me a letter, asking me to rush back to Woodleaf, but I didn't expect the two consultants to be here. In that case, I will take my leave first. When the matter is settled, I will come back to find Sensei." Kakashi. Hearing Kakashi's words, Watergate stopped Kakashi. "What we are talking about is also related to you, so you can stay and listen." Mito Menitis and Zhuan Shaochun looked at Kakashi with their eyes and didn't say anything. Kakashi could only listen to his sensei's order and slowly walked behind Watergate. "Hokage-sama, I don't know if you can give us an explanation for sending column force to Sunagakure for the rescue operation." Hamura Mitokado took the lead and asked Minato with a questioning tone. Obviously, they already knew that the purpose of the Akatsuki was the bijou, but they still sent column force to Sunagakure. Isn't this sending a sheep to the tiger's mouth? This time they were lucky. Naruto didn't have any problems with column force, but this was only because of luck. I understand what consultant means. You are afraid that Naruto will be in danger in Sunagakure. But have you considered the possible benefits of Naruto going to Sunagakure? I believe that you two have also read the mission report submitted by Kakashi. It was our Woodleaf ninja who snatched the body of the Kazekage, repelled the members of the Akatsuki, and gave Chiyo Grandma of Sunagakure a chance to use forbidden jutsu to restore Gaara's life. Woodleaf, without any hesitation, has become the benefactor of the Kazekage and even the entire Sunagakure after this operation. Although we won't do things like asking for favors, but with such an important bargaining chip, it will undoubtedly make the relationship between us and Sunagakure closer. It has been more than 10 years since the last Shinobi World War. During this time, not only Woodleaf has been gathering strength, but other shinobi villages are also slowly becoming stronger. Maybe at any time, another Shinobi World War may break out for some reason. We Woodleaf yearn for peace, but we Woodleaf are never afraid of war. In the Third Shinobi World War, we were the strongest, but fighting on 3 fronts caused the situation to be anxious. Once we have the friendship of Sunagakure, it is equivalent to having the means to contain Iwagakure of the Earth Country. It's also imperceptibly contributing to Konoha's outstanding status. I asked the two consultants and the elders of Konoha to understand the key points of this. Watergate spoke with confidence, but Kakashi, who was standing behind Watergate, was already surprised. His sensei had such deep thoughts? Not only did he set his sights on Woodleaf Village, but he also began to focus on the future. Akatsuki organization, after all is said and done, is only the strength of a small country like Rain Country. Even if they gather a lot of rebellious ninjas and accumulate a lot of money, can they really compare to the foundation of a big country or even 2 big countries? We shouldn't be afraid of Akatsuki. Instead, we should observe them with a calm mind. Maybe there are all kinds of ninjas with strange talents among them, but no matter how strong they are, they will be defeated by the number of people. What kind of heroes are the 3 generations of Reikage of Kumo Shinobu Village? Weren't they defeated by the 3 generations of Tsuchikage of the Earth Country? To be honest, Watergate didn't put Akatsuki in his eyes, because this force was too young. It was just the accumulation of more than 20 years and the recruitment of all kinds of bad ninjas from all over the shinobi world. Can such an organization really condense a powerful force? Watergate, based on his experience and knowledge, felt that Akatsuki didn't have the power to threaten Woodleaf. Carefully analyzing the case of Gaara's kidnapping, it wasn't difficult to find that Akatsuki mainly relied on Sasori's spies in Sunagakure to sneak into Sunagakure, and Deidara used large-scale destructive ninjutsu to consume a lot of Gaara's chakra. Such an action didn't prove how strong Akatsuki was. This method was naturally no problem for Sunagakure, but it was too arrogant to use it against Woodleaf. Chapter 396. Woodleaf is different from Sunagakure. After all, Sunagakure is located in the barren land of wind, and its resources are extremely scarce. Therefore, except for their unique puppeteer, the combat power of ordinary ninjas is relatively low. In order to maintain the operation of the ninja village, many sand ninjas are sent to other countries to perform tasks in exchange for supplies. What Akatsuki did was to choose or use their own savings to create a situation where Sunagakure is lacking in ninjas and can only rely on Gaara to resist the invasion. But this method doesn't work in Woodleaf because Woodleaf is located in the richest land of fire. With resources, there is naturally more demand. The total number of missions in Woodleaf Village accounts for nearly 1/3 of the missions in Woodleaf Village, and the number of ninjas in Woodleaf Village is far more than that in Sunagakure. And inside Woodleaf, there are Hokage, Tsunade, the director of Kiba Hospital, and many Umbu ninjas. Even if the situation is bad, Watergate is willing to pay a certain amount of compensation to let Nangongja, who is staying in Woodleaf, help. In this way, there are 3 Kage-tier ninjas and a large number of Jonin-tier ninjas in Konoha. It's impossible to take the Kyuubi from Konoha just by relying on the method of dealing with Sunagakure. Therefore, Watergate is not so afraid of Akatsuki. After Watergate's reminder, Mito Monitis and Juan Xiaochun, these political veterans, naturally quickly understood the mystery. Just when Mito Monitis and Juan Xiaochun seemed to want to say something, Watergate's face was full of gloomy coldness, as if there was a great anger in his heart. Then, I've already answered your questions clearly. Can you answer one of my questions? Without waiting for Juan Xiaochun and Mito Monitis to respond, Watergate's body erupted with an extremely powerful murderous aura. The 2 advisors who have been away from the battlefield for a long time and only think about the tricks between people naturally couldn't resist. Who is this Jinchuriki you're talking about? Is it a weapon in your eyes? Or is it my child named Uzumaki Naruto? Yes, when Mito Monitis called Naruto Column Force, Watergate began to accumulate anger in his heart. But as the Hokage, answering the questions raised by the advisors is his duty, so Watergate can only suppress the anger in his heart and explain his behavior to Mito Monitis and Juan Xiaochun. When his duty was over, Watergate didn't have to suppress his inner feelings and directly attacked Mito Monitis and Juan Xiaochun. In fact, when Kakashi heard Mito Monitis directly call his disciple Column Force, which is almost like a weapon, he was very unhappy. But after all, how can he compete with Mito Monitis, who is the advisor of the elder group, so he didn't dare to say anything. Seeing his teacher suddenly attacking now, Kakashi was also scared. When did his teacher become such a domineering and majestic existence? 2 advisors, who is the real leader of this Woodleaf village? Is it me, the Hokage, or you, the advisors? If I remember correctly, it should be me, the Hokage, right? What kind of status do you have to look down on your leader's child so contemptuously? And what kind of status do you have to reprimand my decision so condescendingly? Watergate directly stood up from his seat, and several Umbu who were standing in the corners of the room, as well as Kakashi, also took a step forward, and their murderous aura shrouded Mito Monitis and Juan Xiaochun. I know that both of you really care about the Woodleaf village, but caring about the Woodleaf village doesn't mean that you can do anything you want. Just like your former teammate Danzo, didn't he care about the Woodleaf village enough? But his care made him cross the line, and crossing the line should be punished. Both of you are smart people, so I don't need to say anything more. Don't do anything impulsive because of other people's instigation. You are Woodleaf ninjas, not those ninjas from other clans. Those clans only exist because of the Woodleaf village. Without the Woodleaf village, how can those clans survive in the ninja world? Yes, Watergate was using this as a pretext to make a fuss. Mito Monitis and Juan Xiaochun were sent by the higher-ups of the Woodleaf village to check on them. But over the years, Juan Xiaochun and Mito Monitis have slowly changed from the so-called monitors to the role of spokesmen. Every person in power could allow their subordinates to have their own thoughts, but if their subordinates were to openly join another camp, would anyone be able to tolerate it? When the three generations were still alive, they didn't directly kill Mito Menitis and Zhuan Shaochun because they were their teammates. After all, even if it was someone like Danzo, the three generations could tolerate it, let alone Mito Menitis and Zhuan Shaochun, who were just mouthpieces for others. But Watergate wasn't willing to tolerate it. On one hand, Watergate was young and didn't want to tolerate it. On the other hand, it was because Watergate had accumulated enough power to protect himself and even make progress. Watergate didn't want to tolerate the declining power of his clan anymore. So Watergate wanted to centralize power? Mito Menitis and Zhuan Shaochun instantly understood Watergate's intention. Watergate was no longer satisfied with the power that belonged to Hokage in his hands. Watergate wanted to take control of the wood leaf in his own hands and become the true master of the wood leaf. Watergate's sudden attack was actually just a verbal warning and a subtle declaration of war. If the elders didn't take the initiative to admit defeat, what they would see wouldn't be Watergate's angry face at the moment, but a knife flashing with cold light. Mitokado Hamura and Koharu Yuditane, who had been nervous the whole time, sat down on the sofa with pale faces. Minato turned around and looked at the Dark Ops standing in the room. He said to the Dark Ops, "Didn't you see that the two consultants suddenly felt unwell? Hurry up and take the two consultants to Kiba Hospital to have a look. People who are old can't ignore this kind of physical condition." Chapter 397. Facing Mito Menitis and Zhuan Shaochun's pale faces and bulging veins on their foreheads, these Umbu ninjas faithfully executed Watergate's order and forcibly supported Mito Menitis and Zhuan Shaochun out of Hokage's office. Looking at the direction they were heading towards Kiba Hospital, the Senju clan that Tsunade belonged to was a symbol of the Wood Leaf family's power. Although the Senju clan had withered, the noble bloodline of the Senju clan was still the spiritual sustenance of everyone who advocated the family theory. Watergate ordered his subordinates to bring Mito Menitis and Zhuan Shaochun to Kiba Hospital by force. In fact, it could be regarded as a warning to Tsunade, who was worthy of being called his martial uncle. He hoped that his martial uncle would not mix with the group of idle family forces. Otherwise, even if it was a veteran like Mito Menitis and Zhuan Shaochun, he, Watergate, wouldn't mind letting them retire due to illness and live in seclusion. This was the first time in a long time that Kakashi directly saw Watergate in such a political game. Unlike his previous image of a friendly person, Watergate at this moment was like a tiger in the forest, a dragon in the sea step by step towards his throne. As long as it was possible, Watergate didn't mind turning those who stood in his way into small stones. "Sensei, isn't this inappropriate? I don't care about the inner thoughts of the two consultants. The main thing is that behind the two of them are the family forces that occupy an important part of Konoha. Once we have a bad relationship with such forces, even if it's not a life and death battle, at the critical moment, they might use some underhanded tricks to hit us directly." Kakashi really wanted to persuade his sensei to use a relatively gentle attitude to obtain power. But when the words came to his mouth, Kakashi couldn't say it. He could only tell Watergate that he didn't think he should easily offend the two consultants. Watergate understood politics better than Kakashi, and he also understood people's hearts better than Kakashi. Although his disciple was talented and could be regarded as loyal to the Woodleaf family, he still thought of everything too simply. The conflict between him, the elders group, and Root was irreconcilable. As long as he wanted to make a difference, he must get rid of these two places. "Kakashi, you are my disciple. I don't want to deceive you with a hypocritical appearance. I know that you have doubts in your heart, so I am willing to answer your questions." Watergate said. He slowly sat on the sofa. He also gestured to Kakashi, inviting Kakashi to sit opposite him. "I don't know what you think of the elders of Kiba and Root, Kakashi?" Minato didn't directly explain his point of view, but instead asked Kakashi a question. After Kakashi thought for a while, he organized his words and said, "The elders of Kiba are the representatives of the Wood Leaf family forces. They are a way for the Wood Leaf Hokage to control the family forces. To a certain extent, They monitor the daily activities of each family to ensure the internal unity of the Woodleaf village. Root is a branch of the Umbu, but their purpose is more inhumane than the Umbu. They train ninjas into pure killing machines. Although they solve a lot of problems for the Woodleaf village, they are on the verge of losing control, so they need to be eliminated. Kakashi himself is from the Hatake family. Although it is not a prominent family, because of his father Hatake Mauso's outstanding achievements, they can be regarded as a slightly core position of the Woodleaf family forces. Although these family forces are nominally subordinate to the Woodleaf village, once the Woodleaf village is in trouble, they will also contribute, but when the interests of the family and the village are in conflict, in fact, most people will still choose to protect their family interests. But Kakashi can't say this to Watergate because according to the current temper of Watergate, if he hears Kakashi's words, he really doesn't know how to react. And Kakashi himself has also been in the Umbu for a long time, and he has also cooperated with the Root ninjas, so he has some understanding of them. To be honest, Kakashi even feels that compared to these ninjas from Root, he is simply like the so-called samurai who has been eliminated by the times, holding a katana, shouting the spirit of the samurai, and only seeking victory in a direct confrontation. As long as the mission can be completed, the Root ninjas will ruthlessly trample all the so-called self-esteem and pride under their feet. Even if the assassination target is just an ordinary businessman, the Root ninjas will carefully study the person's life pattern until they make a plan without any negligence. And as long as they are persistent, the plan will be murderous. But after all, Root has become history, and it was his sensei who personally turned it into history, so Kakashi naturally can't say the slightly hidden feelings of reverence. Instead, he has to praise his sensei's reasonable actions. Kakashi is no longer the child who doesn't care about anything. Looking at Kakashi sitting opposite him, who has a nervous expression like a primary school student facing an exam, Watergate couldn't help but say with a smile. At this moment, Kakashi also felt that he didn't do well. This kind of deliberately avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial, and even a little flattering words are not what his sensei really wants to hear, but Kakashi doesn't regret it because this is also part of Watergate's test. Konoha's elder group is indeed the core of the family's power, but I think as the head of the Hatake clan, you should know about the mysteries of it even if you don't say it clearly. The family is a force that seeks stability, but to truly develop, stability is the worst choice. As for Root, you don't have to blindly condemn them, because the plan to eliminate Root is not aimed at the Woodleaf's Root, but at Danzo's Root. For the Woodleaf, Root is indispensable, but this kind of power can only be controlled by the Hokage, and in the hands of others it can become a sharp blade that can hurt the Woodleaf at any time. Although I have announced to the public that all the captured ninjas in Root have been properly arranged according to their wishes. However, how could these people, who were born to kill, give up the only thing they were good at? This time, I called you here to talk about some of the Root ninjas that I have received. Chapter 398. Kakashi. I don't know if you still remember an Umbu ninja codenamed A or Tenzin in Umbu? Watergate could clearly see that when he said the name Tenzin, Kakashi's expression was obviously sluggish. But Kakashi quickly adjusted and said to Watergate as usual, "Sensei, you're joking? Tenzin was my subordinate when I was in Umbu, so I'm naturally very familiar with him." Although Watergate didn't say it explicitly, Kakashi knew that Watergate must have used Tenzin's origin to win over many seedlings who wanted to stay. Yes, compared to Sasuke who has no attachment to Woodleaf Village, Watergate naturally valued these experienced and powerful Root ninjas, who can quickly become the backbone of Woodleaf Village. Tian Shan can be considered to have worked hard and made great contributions these years. Moreover, he has a great advantage in the wood escape technique. Considering the particularity of Naruto's identity, I decided to temporarily integrate Tenzin into your class as a deputy instructor, and transfer a good seedling to your team to fill the gap of Sasuke. Because of Naruto's relationship, Watergate didn't directly list Sasuke as a defector of Woodleaf, but Kakashi's team lacked a member is also an indisputable fact. Watergate was reassured by Kakashi, but he didn't think that Kakashi alone could withstand the risk of Naruto's Akatsuki and Naruto himself. Wood release is the strongest release jutsu that can restrain the tailed beast's chakra. The arrangement of Tenzin in Kakashi's team was based on this consideration. And the person who replaced Sasuke's position in the team was even more outstanding. He was already a rare genius, promoted to Chunin at the age of 10, and now his strength was completely comparable to a Jonin. And he also mastered a secret jutsu, Super Beast fake painting, but the only drawback was that he received too much brainwashing and mental destruction en route, so he still didn't have complete emotions. So Watergate hoped that such a child could have feelings under the care of Naruto, Sakura, Kakashi, and Tenzin. Hearing Watergate's decision, Kakashi knew that he had no room to resist or argue, because Watergate's serious and firm voice has closed all the ways to protest. Kakashi only had the choice of accepting the order and executing it. Just as the scene fell into silence, there was a knock on the door of Shuei Men's office. A hint of joy appeared on Minato's face as he muttered, "That's right. It's true that whoever you say will come." But soon, Minato adjusted his posture, sat on his chair and said to the door, "I'm sorry. Come in." The door slowly opened, and two figures appeared in front of Watergate and Kakashi. The two figures were tall and short. The tall figure was wearing a very obvious Umbu uniform and a mask with a cat pattern on his face. The slightly shorter figure was wearing a black short-sleeved uniform. He looked very capable. He had slightly long hair, and his skin was very white, even to an unnatural degree. "Greetings, Hokage-sama." "Greetings, Hokage-sama." The two figures moved almost at the same time and shouted at the same time. The almost terrifying sense of coordination made people's scalps tingle. "No need to be so polite, Tenzin and Sakai. It's good that you came. I'll introduce you to your next task." Letting Tenzin and Sakai stop saluting, Watergate introduced Kakashi to Tenzin and Sakai. Needless to say, Tianshan had a very close relationship with Kakashi. With a little excitement in his eyes, Tianshan greeted Kakashi. Although Sakai hadn't seen Kakashi, he was very familiar with Kakashi's information, so he also greeted Kakashi with a smile. Kakashi, who was a little happy to see Tenzin, looked at Sakai's cheeks that were very close to a smile. He felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. Was this the personality defect that Watergate-sensei said? This kind of distorted smile made everyone who saw it feel a little bit disgusted. Humans were just that sensitive. The difference between a sincere smile and a fake smile was so obvious. "Welcome to Team 7, you two are a member of Team 7. I'm already very familiar with Tenzin, so I won't ask any more questions. As for Sakai, I have already read your information. It can be said that you are perfect. But after all, the ninja team is not a one-person stage, so I will arrange a time to test the cooperation between you and your remaining two teammates. Do you understand?" Kakashi casually told Sakai about his plan, but when he heard the last question, Sakai directly knelt on the ground on one knee, lowered his head, and said very seriously to Kakashi, "Don't worry, Kakashi." "Yes, Sakai." Helplessly looking at Tenzin standing beside him, although Kakashi used to be an Umbu, he still can't help but feel a little repulsed by the Umbu's command-oriented concept. At this moment, Tenzin also took off the mask on his face and the protective gear on his body and put on a very ordinary ninja costume. Looking at Kakashi with a "I can't help it" look. Looking at Tenzin, Kakashi seemed to suddenly think of something and said to Tenzin, "Tenzin, your current name is a bit too famous. Since you want to return to the world of light, do you want a new name?" Kakashi's words also made Tenzin's eyes reveal a light. "A new life in the world of light? I have seen too much killing and blood in my previous life. It is because I hate this kind of life that I decided to leave the Umbu and become an ordinary ninja. So, let my wish be my name. From today on, I will be called Yamato." Hearing the words of Tenzin or Yamato, Kakashi's face also showed a trace of approval, living in the darkness but always yearning for the light. This is the real mentality of an Umbu. At this moment, Sakai, who was half kneeling on the ground, raised his head and looked at the high-spirited Yamato. His eyes began to reveal a kind of envy that he didn't even notice. As a member of the Root, if Yamato can find himself, then he can also do it. Everything seemed to be bright and radiant. As for Sasai, who has been rejected by Naruto at this moment, he also slowly walked to the side of Naruto and Sakura. With a smile on his face, he said to Naruto and Sakura, "Since that's the case, please take care of me in this trial." Looking at the obviously bright but fake smile on Sasai's face, both Naruto and Sakura found it very difficult to accept at this moment, and the disgust from the bottom of their hearts was difficult to suppress. Humph! Naruto didn't want to talk. He looked at Sasai and turned his head away. "You're welcome. Although I don't agree with you joining Team 7, what's done can't be undone. Even if we don't agree, you are already a member of Team 7. In this trial, I hope we can work together and fulfill the expectations of Kakashi and Yamato-sensei." Compared to Naruto, Sakura was obviously much more mature. She used a few short words to clearly express her attitude towards Sasai. And after seeing the reaction of his 3 subordinates, Kakashi also shouted, "Let's go!" Then, the trial begins. As soon as his voice fell, whether it was Naruto, who was in a difficult situation, or Sakura, who was trying her best to accept Sasai as a new member, they immediately responded. Sasai calmly looked at the backs of Sakura and Naruto until they disappeared, then slowly walked into the forest. "These kids are really giving me a headache." Needless to say, Naruto didn't have the slightest intention of accepting Sasai as his teammate. On the other hand, Sakura seemed to be trying her best to accept Sasai's arrival, but the torment in her heart was almost obvious on her face. Sasai's personality has been damaged because of his experience in Root. If he meets a pair of ninjas like Naruto and Sakura, who are very emotional, I don't know what kind of sparks will fly. Although he said that it was a headache, Kakashi didn't know why, but he had a faint hunch in his heart. The combination of Naruto, Sakura, and Sasai may be very interesting. Just when Kakashi was still sighing, several kunai quickly shot towards Kakashi. Standing behind Kakashi, Kakashi also made hand seals to condense chakra. Soon, several thick roots broke out of the ground and flexibly blocked the kunai that shot towards Kakashi. "These kids are really impatient," Kakashi said, but his hand seals were flying, and a ninjutsu was completed in an instant. Placing his palm on the ground, Kakashi shouted, "Don't worry, Earth Release, Earth Splitting Palm." Earth Splitting Palm itself is a ninjutsu used to tear the ground and trap the enemy on the ground in the soil. At this moment, Kakashi used it to tear the ground to find the enemy hidden underground. Unsurprisingly, a figure quickly ran out of the crack in the ground. "Naruto, I saw with my own eyes that you used such a trick to send Deidara flying. How could I not pay more attention to it?" Yes, the figure running out of the soil is naturally Naruto. Looking at Naruto, Kakashi said to Naruto with a bit of sarcasm. And Naruto is still very wise. It seems that he knows that he can't compete with Kakashi and Yamato, so he turned around and ran into the woods without looking back. Looking at Naruto's departure, Kakashi smiled and chased in the direction of Naruto's retreat with Yamato. Chapter 400. If it was during a normal mission, Kakashi and Yamato wouldn't be fooled by Naruto's simple trick of luring the enemy deep into the forest. After all, Kakashi and Yamato were both members of the Umbu. Their experience was very rich. But now, it's just a trial to test the team's tacit understanding, so Yamato and Kakashi are willing to ignore some small tricks to see what's different about this new 3-person team. To Kakashi's surprise, when he entered the forest, the first one to charge at him was not only Naruto, who has always been a straightforward person, but also Sakai, who has just joined Team 7. Naruto is a little behind Sakai. Originally, Kakashi was going to go up alone to compete with Naruto and Sakai, but he was stopped by Yamato beside him. "Kakashi, senpai, let me?" Yamato's slightly honest face showed a smile and said to Kakashi, "Senpai, you do know me well, but I always have to show my strength in front of these children. Let them know that I, as a jonin, am also very powerful." Hearing Yamato's words, Kakashi thought about it carefully and felt that what Yamato said was right. He really should let Yamato show his strength in front of his subordinates. Making a little space for Yamato, Kakashi opened his mouth and said, "Be careful. Sakai and Naruto on the opposite side are actually..." While talking, Kakashi's 3-tomo Sharingan in his left eye also slowly rotated, and his gaze moved between Sakai and Naruto, as if he saw some clues. Yamato smiled slightly, and without waiting for Kakashi to finish speaking, he rushed in the direction of Sakai and Naruto. Sakai himself was one step ahead of Naruto, so the first one to fight with Yamato was Sakai. Unexpectedly, Sakai, who originally looked a little feminine, was bold and full of vigor when he used taijutsu. Although there were still some small flaws in his movements, he relied on his indomitable momentum to make up for these flaws. The two of them fought back and forth for a while, and Naruto, who was behind Sakai, was constantly looking for opportunities to attack Yamato's flaws. The tacit understanding between the two didn't look like two people at all. Sasai's kick forced Yamato to dodge. God knew how Sasai could have such great strength. Every time their fists collided, Yamato's arm would feel numb. Naruto, who was supposed to come up and take advantage of the situation, quietly hid his figure behind Sakai at this moment. He secretly put his left hand behind his back, and Naruto also stretched out his hands to cover Sakai's left hand. A chakra group quietly appeared. It was Naruto's best ninjutsu, Rasengan. Ha! Sakai pressed the Rasengan in his hand on Yamato's body, who was half-squatting at the moment. It seems that he hasn't recovered from the dodging posture just now. Yamato's body was directly hit, and Sakai's body also rose with smoke and turned into Naruto's appearance. "Yamato-sensei, you seem to be just like this." With a bit of showing off, Naruto looked at Yamato, who seemed to be injured in a big pit on the ground. But Yamato didn't move at all in the pit. Naruto scratched his head slightly and said to himself in embarrassment, "That's right. Strange, I have already restrained my strength just now. Yamato-sensei can't be so weak that he was seriously injured by me, right?" Naruto just wanted to walk into the pit he made to see Yamato-sensei's situation, but a voice suddenly sounded. "Stupid Naruto, why don't you retreat quickly? It's a trap." The owner of the voice was naturally Sakura. She was lurking in the place where Naruto and Yamato fought. Although Naruto used the Shadow Clone Jutsu and then turned into Sakai's appearance to fight Yamato, Sakura quickly noticed that the so-called Sakai taijutsu routine was exactly the same as Naruto's. Needless to say, Naruto must have done something. But she was more familiar with Naruto. Could she be sure that Yamato and Sakai were not familiar with each other? So Sakura did not directly go forward to fight against Yamato with Naruto. Instead, she lurked to the side and waited for an opportunity. Naruto's combo just now was actually very unexpected. After all, if it was Naruto who used Rasengan, he would definitely be guarded against. But for someone who had nothing to do with Naruto to suddenly use Rasengan, it was indeed very surprising. Originally, Sakura was ready to directly help Naruto take down Yamato-sensei at this time, but Sakura was a girl after all, and she observed things very carefully. Sakura was obviously aware that there was something wrong with Yamato's incoherent movement when he got up, and when Yamato was hit to the ground by the Rasengan, Sakura was very careful to notice that there were a few pieces of wood flying around Yamato's body. So when she saw that Naruto was about to approach Naruto, she didn't care about hiding her figure, and immediately shouted, wanting to prevent Naruto from getting hit. But when Naruto heard Sakura's voice, he had already taken a step forward. For a while, the ground began to churn, and finger-sized tree roots rushed out of the soil and directly wrapped around Naruto's foot. The tree roots seemed to have a life of their own, and immediately climbed along Naruto's foot to Naruto's body. Layers of thumb-sized tree roots directly wrapped Naruto in it, leaving only Naruto's head exposed in the air. The color of Yamato, who was originally lying in the big pit, slowly faded and turned into the color of wood. The real Yamato came out of the woods on the side, and suddenly accelerated directly toward the exposed Sakura. Chakra was constantly flowing in his body as he formed a hand seal. The bushes that Sakura was hiding in seemed to be alive, twisting their bodies as if they wanted to wrap Sakura tightly in it. Sakura made a prompt decision and directly came out of the bushes. Looking at the direction, It seemed that she was going to rescue Naruto, who was trapped in the tree roots. After all, there were only 3 ninjas on her side, and relatively speaking, the cooperation between her and Naruto was perfect, and rescuing Naruto was naturally the best choice. Seeing Sakura's intention, Yamato also made hand seals. Mokutan. Giant wood pillar technique. A thick wood suddenly broke out of the ground and blocked in front of Sakura. Chapter 401. Yamato naturally didn't think that his great wooden pillar jutsu could stop Sakura, but such a huge wooden pillar wasn't easy to bypass. Such a huge wooden pillar appeared in Sakura's path to Naruto, but Sakura didn't intend to dodge at all. Speed is important in war, not only in war, but also when ninjas fight against ninjas, they also pay attention to their own speed. Because as long as there is a trace of hesitation, it will expose a fatal flaw to the opponent. Yamato wanted to use his great wooden pillar jutsu to block Sakura from saving Naruto, and Sakura wanted to use her great strength to break the huge wooden pillar in front of her to buy time. Sakura herself was a top student in the Ninja Academy. Wood Leaf's first Hokage's wood release was naturally not to be underestimated. So at this moment, her black-gloved fist was constantly condensing chakra, preparing to launch a shocking blow. Yamato looked at Sakura's appearance of using great strength, but he didn't do anything to stop it, as if he was letting Sakura use her full strength. Ha! Sakura shouted violently, and her fist directly hit the huge wooden pillar. A strong wind blew in all directions, but the huge wooden pillar didn't seem to be damaged. Sakura gathered more chakra on her fist, and even blue veins appeared on her forehead. She shouted, "Break!" The huge wooden pillar that originally looked undamaged directly shattered into pieces of wood less than 10 centimeters in size under the huge force of Sakura's great strength. Yamato, who was standing on the side, didn't have time to react. Although he knew that Sakura was Tsunade's disciple, he didn't expect that Sakura's great strength was so proficient. Sakura naturally knew that Yamato was actually holding back, and Kakashi, who was standing on the side, didn't move. Because of this inner tension, Sakura used the great strength on her feet, and suddenly her speed soared again. Seeing that she was about to get close to Naruto, a voice appeared in Sakura's ears. Earth release. Heart beheading technique. A hand suddenly emerged from the ground under Sakura's feet. The hand wrapped in chakra grabbed Sakura's ankle. Sakura knew that Kakashi, who has been watching from the side, made a move, but she didn't panic at all. Instead, she raised her other foot that wasn't caught by the hand and fiercely stepped on the ground. Great strength. Pain heaven's kick. In an instant, the flat ground at this moment, it quickly collapsed at this moment. The move that Kakashi used to deal with Naruto was perfectly returned at this moment by Sakura, but Kakashi didn't attack blindly like Naruto. Instead, he was very cautious and retreated to Yamato's side. Sakura has really unknowingly become very powerful. I haven't seen her for only a few years, and she can already beat me to this extent. Kakashi couldn't help but secretly mutter to himself, as if his daughter had grown up and didn't need the care of a middle-aged uncle as a father. Senpai, do we really not need to continue to stop Sakura from rescuing Naruto? Yamato was still very concerned about the trial, and he still couldn't understand why Kakashi didn't do anything after stopping him once. Yamato, you have to remember one thing. Kakashi looked back at Yamato and said very seriously, you are no longer Tenzo, who existed in the dark operation just to complete orders. You are now the guidance ninja of this group of children. The reason why we are fighting them now is not because we want to win, but to make these children more united. It's not that we don't resist, but we still need to make some timely guidance. For example, it's already effective now. After saying that, Kakashi's finger pointed at him. Yamato looked in the direction that Kakashi pointed and found that 2 ink-like black rats had already arrived near the tree root that bound Naruto, and several ink-like pythons were quickly rushing towards Kakashi and Yamato's location. After all, Sakai is from the dark operation, and he knows very well what kind of situation he should use his strength in. Just like now, he is using his Super Beast pseudo-painting to restrain us on one hand, and help Sakura to untie Naruto on the other hand. While talking, the ink-like pythons rushing towards Kakashi and Yamato were already in front of them. Yamato and Kakashi didn't relax, and each of them directly took out a kunai and held it in their hands, entangling with the pythons. Sakura quickly approached Naruto, who was wrapped in the tree root. Two ink-like rats suddenly rushed out from behind Naruto, and each of them shattered into dots of ink on the tree root. These dots are the key points to destroy the tree root, and they were specially marked by Sakai for Sakura. Sakura also didn't hesitate. She directly used her monstrous strength to tear off all the dots of ink on the tree root. The tree root that originally looked so solid that even a brute like Naruto couldn't directly destroy it was now easily torn apart like a piece of cloth. Sakura, looking at Sakura who saved him, Naruto's face showed a very obvious embarrassment. But at this moment, Sakura said to Naruto with a heroic spirit, "There's no need to be so polite. I've been worried about you for so many years. This time, you still have to thank Sakai. Without his help, I wouldn't have been able to destroy those tree roots so quickly." Although Sakura wasn't so clear about Sakai's specific ability, but standing on her side and entangling Kakashi and Yamato, the two instructors, except for Sakai who just joined Team 7, there must be no one else, right? Naruto's face also showed a complicated look, because even if Naruto has a certain prejudice against Sakai, Sakai's own strength and ability to observe the battle situation are very admirable. That guy. Let's talk about it after this trial is over. Hearing Naruto's words, Sakura's face also showed a smile. Anyway, Naruto's attitude is not so tough, which is a good change. Sasuke, after all, chose his own path. Although Sakura sincerely hopes that Sasuke can stay in Konoha, the world is not as you wish. Life is still going on, and it's not so good to be too persistent. In the past 3 years, Sakura has been accompanying Tsunade and Nangongja, and learned a little from these two people, right? Chapter 402. After rescuing Naruto from the roots, a small black mouse once again appeared in front of Naruto and Sakura. Sakura slightly looked back at Kakashi and Yamato, who seemed to be still entangled with the black python, and ran in the direction pointed by the black mouse. Following the black mouse's guidance, and removing some of the traces left behind by herself and Naruto, Sakura and Naruto finally saw Sasai and approached him. Sasai seemed to have completely entered the state of mind. His slightly pale face was tightly stretched, and his eyes were cold at the moment, revealing a kind of coldness that was difficult to ignore. Naruto and Sakura, who wanted to say a few words to Sasai, didn't know what to say at this moment. Sasai seemed to be aware that Naruto and Sakura had come to his side, and said without looking back, "Since you're here, our mission this time is to snatch the bell from Kakashi's hands." But Kakashi's side has 2 experienced Jonin, although Sakura Haruno and Uzumaki Naruto's strength are close to that of a Jonin, and I also have the strength of a Jonin. But Yamato and Kakashi used to be teammates, and the degree of tacit understanding between them is far beyond us. Fortunately, this time Kakashi and Yamato seem to have a certain mentality of playing around in the trial, otherwise we wouldn't have a chance to complete the mission. So I've temporarily considered several plans, and now I'm going to tell you 2 about it. If you want to deal with a ninja who is stronger than you, that is, the so-called weak conquers the strong, you have to fully play your advantages and take advantage of the opponent's weaknesses. From the information I know, we can confirm that Kakashi doesn't have a lot of chakra, and although Yamato's Mokutan is very rare, its attack is not that strong. So, my suggestion is to find a ninja who has a lot of chakra and is good at long-range attacks to fight with Kakashi, and control Kakashi's chakra to a safe range. Another ninja who is good at taijutsu will fight with Yamato, and use his spear to break the shield so that Yamato has no spare energy to support Kakashi. Then send a strong attacker to attack Kakashi and Yamato, and make them lose the ability to fight. I'm good at long-range attacks, so I can be used to contain Kakashi. Haruno Sakura's taijutsu is Tsunade and Nangongja, so she's good enough to deal with Yamato. As for Uzumaki Naruto, he will be in the middle. While assisting me and Haruno Sakura, he will constantly look for opportunities to attack Yamato and Kakashi, and become the opportunity to defeat them. It has to be said that Sasai's plan at the moment is almost all the information from both sides, and after analyzing it, it's hard to imagine that this plan was made after determining the content of the trial. Could it be that this is an umbu, or an umbu of the umbu, the legendary root ninja? Sasai looked at Sakura, and Naruto also looked at Sakura. It seemed that they didn't expect Sakura to break out at this time. Kakashi and Yamato also quickly discovered the abnormality here and rushed over. Seeing Sasai being knocked to the ground, and Sakura and Naruto being silent, their faces were full of bitter smiles for a while. Chapter 403. Kakashi's original intention of organizing this trial was to let Naruto, Sakura, and Sasai, who didn't know each other that well, understand each other better and have the tacit understanding that a team should have. In the beginning, when Kakashi saw that Naruto and Sasai could fight together, he was actually very happy. However, after careful observation, he found that it was actually the result of Naruto using the Shadow Clone Jutsu and Transformation Jutsu. Kakashi suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. When Sakura rescued Naruto with Sasai's help, the three of them stopped moving. Kakashi and Yamato thought that the three of them had met and began to discuss countermeasures. Just as the two of them were looking forward to seeing what kind of new cooperation they could come up with, the unexpected noise here attracted Kakashi and Yamato's attention. Looking at the angry Sakura, the indignant Naruto, and the confused and vicious Sasai on the ground, both Kakashi and Yamato felt a headache coming on. Sure enough, was this the rebellion of adolescence? Kakashi and Yamato looked at each other. One of them covered his left eye with his forehead protector and walked towards Sakura and Naruto while holding his head. The other slowly walked to Sasai's side and pulled Sasai up from the ground. The two of them took the children in front of them to the side and talked to each other. After a long time, the two sides met again. Looking at the silent Naruto and Sakura, Sasai, who was standing next to Yamato, spoke first. "I'm sorry. I was too impulsive just now and said something I shouldn't have said, which made the two of you have such a big reaction." After that, Sasai bowed deeply to Naruto, Sakura, and even Kakashi and Yamato. His attitude was extremely humble and respectful, but his face still had his signature disgusting fake smile, making people feel that Sasai didn't seem to know what he did wrong. He just accepted someone else's order and did his best to carry it out. This kind of fake smile and fake humility made Naruto and Sakura, who were standing opposite him, uncomfortable for a while. To be honest, I don't think you can really enter Team 7 and become my teammate, but I do know that if I want to find Sasuke, your strength is indispensable. So even if your smile is unbearable, even if your pretentiousness makes me feel disgusted, I still have to act with you. But that's all. Naruto walked in front of Sasai and said calmly to Sasai. That kind of calm feeling was like an objective statement of an irrefutable fact. Without the influence of previous emotions, Naruto's words made people feel that Naruto was really unwilling to accept the existence of Sasai. Sasai listened to Naruto's words, but smiled non-committally. He reached out to shake hands with Naruto to show the harmonious atmosphere between the two. But Naruto ignored Sasai's outstretched hand and directly left the training ground. Looking at Naruto's departure, Sakura walked in front of Sasai and said, "Sasai, Sasai, I know that you have a lot of things hidden in your heart, and it's your own experience that shaped you now. I don't hate you, but it's hard for me to agree with you. This time, it's the Hokage-sama's compulsory appointment, and we have an important task to complete. When this task is over, I will directly return to the village and propose to the Hokage-sama that you be transferred out of Team 7. Looking at Naruto and Sakura talking to Sasai one after another, Kakashi and Yamato, who were standing on the side, were speechless for a while. They thought that the three of them could get along well, but the result was the first time they met. With such an internal atmosphere, let alone going out to perform a task, even if they were just sitting there quietly, it would cause trouble. Seeing that Naruto and Sakura's figures were all gone, Kakashi stepped forward a few steps to Sasai's side, and just as he was about to speak, Sasai raised his head and looked at Kakashi with a pair of eyes and said in advance, Is Hataki-sensei trying to comfort me? There's no need for that at all. I have seen people worse than them. In fact, from my personal point of view, I don't think it's unacceptable to stay in the Umbu all the time. But a ninja's mission is to complete the task. Since the Hokage-sama gave me the task, I naturally have to do my best to complete it. So you don't have to comfort me. As long as it's to complete the task, I can face anything. Suddenly being rebuked by the person he wanted to comfort, even Kakashi suddenly didn't know what to say. Kakashi, who was speechless, could only watch Sasai leave the training ground. Yamato, who had been silent beside him, seemed to be defending Sasai and said to Kakashi, "Kakashi-san, I hope you don't lower yourself to Sasai's level. This child has also experienced a lot of bad things." With that, Yamato also told some information about Sasai that he got from Watergate not long ago to Kakashi. Whether it was Sasai being forced to kill his brother Shin, or Shimura Danzo being able to erase Sasai's feelings and turn Sasai into a killing tool in his hands, Yamato told Kakashi everything clearly. Kakashi thought that he was clear enough about the darkness hidden in Konoha, but Sakai's life was almost the same as the cultivation method of the mist, which was known as the blood mist. Thinking of the former Haku, and seeing the current Sasai, Kakashi's heart couldn't help but hope that Sasai can recover from this abnormal state. After all, whether it was Gen or Danzo, they were no longer in Wood Leaf Village, and no one will harm a child like Sasai anymore. Yamato, I understand what you mean. Sasai was indeed a pitiful child, and I naturally hoped that I could help this child as much as I could. Now, everything is still the task. I believe that all the pain will slowly fade away. Hearing Kakashi's words, Yamato could only nod and agree with Kakashi's point of view. When rescuing Gaara, Sasori told Sakura that his spy will meet with him at the World Bridge in Kusanagi country 10 days later. Such news was naturally immediately reported to Watergate's desk. Watergate doesn't care about Sasuke, but Watergate cares about Orochimaru's information. This is why Watergate was so eager to complete Kakashi's team, and even added an experienced Umbu ninja. You're tuning in to the Legend of the Vagabond YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.